and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space in a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Oh, no, I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists, there is just so much to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question, so I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, so you get the job, yeah? Come on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what, there's no.
I think David Lammy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, a very good morning to you just after 6 o'clock on Sunday, June the 8th. I'm David Bull, and the weather, by the way, much better today. Welcome along. Thanks very much for your company. Great news because it is Sunday, of course. It's National Best Friends Day today. Now, life wouldn't be the same without best friends. They are the friends you can count on at a moment's notice. These are the ones that love, laugh, support you and cherish you as well, in both the good times and the bad times. And today is all about celebrating them.
I'll be there for you.
Now, also, talking of friends, actually, it's National Name Your Poison Day. This is a really fun day to grab a few friends and head out to a bar. Once you're there, you can get a drink, and this is a day where you're encouraged to choose something you wouldn't normally order. Ooh, that's a bit racy, isn't it? Go on, have a tipple.
Tequila. It makes me happy. Who wants tequila?
Yeah, good tequila I like, not bad tequila. Please drink responsibly, of course. Also, a bit of a segue, though, it's British Heart Week as well, a vital event dedicated to raising awareness about the health and importance of heart care. Look after your heart. Oh, Dave, you've had done yourself today. Well done. Marvellous stuff, marvellous stuff. Let's move on to this morning and this hour's Fascinating Facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
I am loving this one. On this day in 793, Vikings raided the abbey at Lindisfarne in Northumbria. The event is commonly accepted as the beginning of the Scandinavian invasion of England, and you wondered why. I'm blonde. Also, dirty blonde, obviously. On this day in 1536, the English Parliament met and settled the succession on the future children of Henry VIII by Jane Seymour. The princesses Mary and Elizabeth were declared illegitimate. And on this day in 1982, American President Ronald Reagan became the first American head of state to address a joint session of the British Parliament. And those are this hour's Fascinating Facts.
It's a weekend breakfast, start your day right. We serve it up laughs and the best of news. With David and Duncan, it's a weekend cruise.
Well, I think we've just given it away, actually. My presenter friend for this morning, I'm delighted to say, is Duncan Barks, who I've dragged out of the pub.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
I'm sprightly, thank you.
You look sprightly.
Do I?
Yes, you do.
Wide-eyed? Bright-eyed?
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Indeed, yeah.
You look it.
Thank you.
Yes. Have you lost weight?
Yes.
Have you?
No. Well, it's difficult. It goes up and down.
I think you have.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
Oh, right.
And actually, this is a lovely segue into heart health.
Okay.
Are you worried about your heart?
Well,
now I've gone back into doctor role.
You have,
yes.
Dr. David. So I can talk about this for quite a while. So I had my hip replaced 18 months ago.
Gosh.
Because when I was a kid, I had some accidents. My hips were mashed up, and I need the other one replacing. And I've got this great surgeon, and he was just like, fella, you need to lose a bit of weight. So I started going to the gym, which for me 2 years ago would have been like, I just couldn't think of anything worse. And I don't enjoy it, but I make it bearable because I listen to podcasts.
But I imagine you enjoy it once you've been.
I feel great afterwards.
Yes, you see.
So what I started doing is I was doing like 45 minutes 3 times a week on the exercise bike because it's good for the hips, but also it's good for your cardiovascular.
Very much so.
And I've continued it because I do need another hip replacing probably next year at some point. But I do feel great. When I come out of there, I feel a little bit smug. But also, I have that feeling inside where I actually feel healthy.
Yeah, well, it's your endorphin rush,
It's the endorphins. And then that gets you into, because, you know, I'm hurtling into middle age, it gets you into the whole area where you start taking a bit more care about what you eat, mostly what you drink. And, yeah, so I started to take a lot of interest in my heart health.
It's really interesting. I wonder what age you start to do that. I mean, I used to run a great deal on treadmills. It's a bit boring. And then I ran outside. I used to do about 7.5 miles 3 times a week.
Wow.
And then as you get older, you don't have the structures to support your face.
Yeah.
So I've moved. I'm a mammal now. I'm a middle-aged man in Lycra.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
You're not racing around the lanes of Suffolk, getting in the way of people.
Looking sexy.
Yeah.
Well, that's
have you got those really funky sunglasses?
I have funky sunglasses. I've also got... It is quite tight, my little outfit.
Right.
And it's also in day glow fluorescence as well. But actually, my brother got me into it, and it's really nice, actually. I don't spend a lot of time with my brother, but when I do, we're on bikes together and we chat for like 2 hours, because, of course, we're out for a long time.
Do the two of you cycle 2 abreast?
We do.
Really?
Unless there are cars coming.
Just thought I'd check.
But it's in the country. It's on country roads. So on the whole, you're pretty okay. I mean, it's just worth saying that actually, in terms of cardiovascular disease, we have a major problem in this country. It affects around 7 million people in the UK. Of course, it's responsible for 1 in 4 premature deaths in the UK, accounts for the largest gap in health expectancy. This is the figure that I think is really interesting. Those in the most deprived 10% of the population are almost twice as likely to die of cardiovascular disease than those who are in a sort of more affluent part of the country. And of course, you're higher at risk if you have diabetes, a family history of heart disease, if you smoke, also if you're from a black, Asian or minority ethnic background.
It's such an interesting area, isn't it? Because it's not just about exercise, it's about what you put in your body. I mean, I've pretty much stopped eating fast food. I mean, I think...
Well done.
Yeah, well, because you just look at it, it's empty calories, it's not good, it's heavily processed, and I love my grub, as you can probably work out, but I also like cooking. So, you know, I'm happy to do stuff from scratch. If you start looking at some of the ready meals, and I don't want to lecture people about this, but the amount of salt and sugar.
Salt and sugar and preservatives and E numbers. Exactly. I mean, I think you should always look at the number of E numbers, and then you can work out whether it's any good for you.
Exactly that.
So it's better if you cook and freeze it, but obviously you need time to do that, which is actually very cost efficient as well.
It is, and the time thing is interesting because I have conversations with people who just haven't got the time, and it's like, well, hang on a second, you've got 2 hours to doom scroll every night sitting on the sofa. If you put an hour of that to one side, you could easily make a massive old pot of, I don't know, stew, vegetarian curry or whatever. You know what's in it. It's not full of chemicals or preservatives. As you say, David, it's cheap. The job's a good one.
Yeah, I totally agree. Right, let's move on and talk about what's in the papers this morning. This is the front page of the Sunday Telegraph. Badenoch, let bosses ban burkas in offices. Now, yesterday we spoke a great deal about this. Of course, this is based on Sarah Pochin asking that question to Keir Starmer in the House. Now, Kemi Badenoch has given this big interview. She says that bosses should have the right to ban staff from wearing burkas and other face coverings in the workplace. It's quite interesting, this, because she went further. She also hit out at Sharia courts and first cousin marriage for acting as an insidious barrier to integration. Those are her words. She said she has strong views about face coverings and would not allow people in her constituency surgeries if they wore face veils, and I think she's absolutely right on that. It's quite interesting, isn't it? She's mentioning Sharia law. It's not something we talk about a great deal. No. I think we should talk about it. I want to know, what is the role of Sharia law in this country? Those courts are not binding, but obviously, and I looked it up this morning, They provide legal rulings and advice to Muslims in accordance with the interpretation of Islamic Sharia law, based on the 4 Sunni schools of thought. They tend to handle cases of marriage and divorce, and to a lesser extent business and finance. Is there a place for Sharia courts, do you think, in the UK?
Well, surely one nation, one country should just have
one legal system.
Well, yeah, I would have thought that's quite obvious.
I would.
I heard some of the Burka conversation on Talk yesterday. That this is all about integration, isn't it?
I think so.
And that also includes Sharia law. And I think as a nation, we have been, and I said this before in the past, so I mean, I don't consider it to be particularly controversial. I think as a nation, we have been so tolerant and so fair over the last couple of decades, but now things have gone too far in the opposite direction. And we're in a situation where you talk about a legal system, we should have one legal system. We shouldn't have this other legal system that operates in certain cities around the country.
I would agree totally. Yeah. And also, you don't know what the the rules around this are. You don't know about the checks and balances. No. I'm deeply concerned that obviously it's going to be prejudicial against women. Yeah. Just by the very nature of the way they're set up. I would agree with that. And also, it's interesting that she's now talking about the burqa ban. I said this yesterday. Sarah Pochin asking that question I thought was pretty punchy. It came from a constituent, and I think she framed it right. Yeah. Whether it was the right question to ask as your first question, I'm not sure. But she then said to Keir Starmer, because you're so keen on following Europe and the other European countries, then surely this would be an obvious step for you to go to. Yeah, I mean, I watch Prime Minister's Questions most weeks, so I can't watch it. I listen to it because it's part of my job, and he was terrified. When she asked that question, and he didn't answer it. Oh, I'm not going to go down that route or whatever. But don't you think he has a duty, a moral right? He's a Prime Minister. Yes, I would agree. That's the whole point of Prime Minister's Questions. You have your 650 MPs in the House who have an opportunity to ask a question of the Prime Minister about whatever they want. Sometimes on behalf of their constituents, sometimes there might be something that they want to put forward on behalf of their party. And the fact that he wouldn't answer it or couldn't answer it speaks volumes. Didn't dare answer it. And we know why, because this is, again, I don't think it's particularly controversial. If you look at the vote share that Labour MPs tend to get from what we might call ethnic minority voters, you have a number of Labour MPs at the moment. I mean, you've got Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary. I was about to say, his majority is about 9, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, you can probably count it on your fingers and toes. So anything that comes from the Prime Minister, the Labour Prime Minister, that might be seen as contentious to those who come from an ethnic minority community is going to be seized upon, and I think he is genuinely terrified. I would agree, and actually there's an excellent article which was written in The Spectator by Kunwar Kuldane Shahid saying that at least 10 Muslim majority countries have enforced bans on the burqa, not just the burqa but the niqab as well, which is the partial face covering. He talks about Algeria, Azerbaijan, also Bosnia, encompassing ethnic, political, sectarian and geographical diversity in Muslim populations that have restricted the garment in public spaces. Now, they also say the reason that they've done that and the reason they've banned the hijab is because they are deeply concerned about the risk to people's safety, because of course if you have your head covered then you don't know who those people are. And actually, if Muslim countries are doing that, then surely we should look to Muslim countries and make sure that if it isn't offensive to Muslim countries, then surely it can't be offensive here. Absolutely that. So I look at this from two perspectives. So you've got this Sunday Telegraph front page, Badenoch, let bosses ban burqas in offices. I'm not a fan of banning things. No, right? It goes against everything I stand for. I certainly don't like government banning things. The older I get... But they managed to ban crucifixes, didn't they, in various workplaces? I mean, I'm just making the point. I don't think government's job really is to ban stuff. So I'd make that observation. However, I do believe that burqas and face coverings do get in the way of integration. And I also think there's a security risk as well. And it might surprise you to know, David, I'm a little bit of a feminist, right? You know, I have a daughter in her early 20s and stuff. I want every woman to have the same opportunities as every other female that walks this planet. And I can simply not believe that the majority of women who walk around in this country, I mean other countries, but we're talking about the United Kingdom, who wear
a burqa, they're doing it out of choice. I don't believe every woman is doing it out of choice.
No.
And therefore, that is not equality, is it?
No, and what this author is saying, it's evident in Muslim states, they deem these sexist coverings to be such that erase female identities, and that is the idea of these facial coverings. And so, therefore, if those Muslim countries can say, OK, we're not cool with this and we are going to get rid of them, then I think we should follow suit as well. And actually, when you read the Quran, it actually doesn't mandate the face veiling, which I didn't know, and the cultural practice of donning the face veil predates the advent of Islam anyway in Arabia.
Isn't it about modesty?
Yes.
It's about modesty, and that is open to interpretation.
Well, is it modesty or is it about a shackle? Because it's to do with not showing your human flesh to a man other than your husband.
Yeah. But that is still open to interpretation.
Of course it is.
Yeah. It's interesting that the Badenoch has done this. I don't think you need to be the sharpest tool in the box to realise that she's trying to take some space that could be occupied by Reform UK.
But it's a bit late, isn't it? Because, of course, that question was on Wednesday. We're on Sunday.
I know. Well, it's knee-jerk, isn't it? It's a little bit knee-jerk.
But do you think they sat there and thought, right, OK, we better talk about something in the Sunday papers, let's do that?
Possibly. I think the Conservative Party has a massive problem at the moment. It has a number of problems, some of which are its backbench MPs, but I think it has a massive problem in terms of what does it stand for, and I don't think they know what they stand for, and I think they've got into this cycle at the moment, which is, oh my God, we're terrified of Reform UK.
Which is true.
The poll ratings are dropping for the Conservative Party compared to Reform. Labour are out in head as well. What do we do about it? And I think they've almost got into this mindset, which is, well, let's look at the polls. Let's look at what people are saying. Oh, there seems to be some mileage behind the idea of banning the burqa. Oh, we could say something about that. Which, I mean, I have a degree of sympathy with, because that's not the only political party who knee-jerks. I mean, all political parties are guilty of it from time to time and being opportunistic. But I look at this and it's just like, well, what does this Tory party stand for? Is it now about banning the burqa? I don't know.
I think that's my problem with it, which is it's reactionary. I don't see this as an original thought that has come from Kemi Badenoch. She goes further. She starts talking about the ECHR. Now, obviously, Reform UK's position is to leave the ECHR.
Yeah.
Now, what the Conservatives are doing, she's going to have this investigation done by Wolfson, who will report back on whether they should leave the ECHR. And again, that smacks to me of someone who doesn't know their own mind. She then says that actually, in terms of that, she warns Liberal Conservatives you will be blocked from standing for the party if you disagree with the commission set up by Wilson to look at the ECHR. So again, that's kind of trying to keep the party together. She then started talking about digital ID cards. I mean, this is now starting to get onto quite dangerous territory. But did she bring that up, or did someone ask her about that?
This makes me really angry.
Go on.
OK, because we know that the Blair administration looked at ID cards. It didn't happen, predominantly because the coalition of the Tories and Lib Dems got in 2010 and scrapped the idea. We now know it's rearing its ugly head.
It is.
Again.
And why is that Tony Blair?
Well, it is because it was it's the Blair Institute, isn't it? Who've done a paper that's been adopted by Labour, who've gone, we quite like the look of this. So you've got Labour, you've got elements of the Labour government going, maybe digital ID is the answer. You now have this interview in the Telegraph that Kemi Badenoch has done, saying she was open to the introduction of digital ID cards. You might have heard me slam the desk a few moments ago. This makes me really cross, because the argument is like, oh, well, this will...
If you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to hide.
Well, it's about clamp down on illegal migration, right? So we've given up. We've given up protecting our borders, right? Because that's what you're saying, aren't you? We can't stop people coming into this country, an island surrounded by the sea, by the way. It should be easier.
It should really be very easy.
So instead, we're going to enforce everyone to have some form of digital ID on their phone. It's ludicrous.
It is ludicrous. She also says, and again, this goes back to, I don't really know what she thinks. She says, I'm beginning to move a bit more on digital identity. Now, is that because she's trying to watch the polls, pretty much what you're saying? How do people feel about digital ID cards? My gut feeling on digital ID is I'm completely against it. I believe in in freedom. If I want to go trotting around this country and not carrying ID, I think we should be entitled to do so. I mean, it's quite compelling to say that actually it would then stop people being in the black market, that therefore employers would know who these people are. But actually there's a duty of care on the employer to make sure you know who those people are already.
I'll go back to the point I made earlier. The bigger issue here is that this government currently and the previous government lost control of our borders, all right? The only reason we're having this debate about digital ID is because there's been this dereliction of duty of successive governments not to be able to monitor and control who comes into this country. So I just think it's a fudge.
Yeah.
I think it's a fudge. And also, I mean, there's so much illegal money involved in all of this, the crime that's involved in illegal migration. I'm sure there's a way of faking digital ID in some way. So and then what we're going to see happening is we're going to see old Doris walking down the high street, and you know there might be some incident that happens, and the first thing the police will just go is like, Doris, can I have a look at your digital ID,
100%.
please? And I just find that absolutely
But we already
outrageous.
see that in other countries, like Spain, for example.
Well, I don't want to be like
ID.
other countries.
Well, I would agree with you. But also, it's a bit like if you, I mean, I'm sure on the odd occasion when you've ordered some wine, for example, from an online distributor, very rare. But you know, they turn up and they have to say, are you 18? I want some ID.
Yeah.
Well, I look 18? Do I look 18?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So just in terms of that, let me just ask you a question which I'll broaden out.
Yeah.
Out of all of those political parties, and I'm talking about Kemi Badenoch not really having an original thought of her own, you've seen the problems, and we'll talk about it in a minute, the problems that Reform has been going through as part of their sort of teething problems. Labour clearly in a lot of problems over the Prime Minister not answering those questions. Which political leader do you trust the least?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you.
I'll go through them all, okay, and I'll give you probably a politician's answer to some of this because, you know...
well, I have some attributes. And...
All right, so first off, I don't even know who the leaders of the Green Party are this week, so I can't answer that question. Secondly, Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, I consider to be the Benny Hill of British politics, so I've got absolutely I have no interest in anything he's got to say. I think it's very clear you can't trust anything that comes out of the mouth of Keir Starmer. Kemi Badenoch, at this current moment in time, I don't think she knows what she thinks.
Yes.
So how can you trust her? And Nigel Farage, well, he's a politician. I think there is an argument to say he might be guilty of being opportunistic when it comes to certain policy areas, you know, because at the moment you've got Reform maybe in the north, well, let's nationalise things, but in the south, you know, that might not play out so well, so I think that's an issue. And actually, as a functioning journalist, I treat all politicians with equal contempt.
And scepticism.
And why not?
Why not, indeed. Duncan, thank you very much for the moment. Let me ask you at home, if I may, my question this morning, which political leader do you trust the least? And there's a smorgasbord to choose from out there. The number 0344 499 1000, those calls charged at the national rate. You can also text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well, at talkTV. Also, you can send a voice note as well. Very keen to get voice notes as well. Now, after the break, I want to talk about this other big story. It is in the Sunday Telegraph. It is also in the Sunday Times front page. It happened yesterday. The headline is Zia Yusuf is to return to Reform 2 days. Gosh, that wasn't very long, was it? After his exit from Reform UK. So what is going on in the bowels of Reform UK? Hopefully we'll shed some light on that after this break. This is Weekend Breakfast. Very good morning to you.
So I've been chased down the street with someone wielding a knife, which you know about, Alex. I then had my phone swiped and the police said, oh, you're lucky they didn't have a knife. Oh, yeah, I'm so lucky. Thank you so much.
lucky,
Yeah. It's an epidemic. And I was talking to the policewoman because I wanted to report it. And she just said, I've just come from Dubai, of all places. She said, I cannot believe how safe it is there. I wish it was like that here. She said, even if we caught the guy who stole your phone, he would not get locked up. We have soft touch policing.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 6:25 already on Sunday, June the 8th. Duncan Barks joins me this morning, broadcaster extraordinaire and also a man who knows his pints of beer.
Yes.
Now, lots of messages coming in already on this digital ID. Good morning, David. What happens with phone-based digital ID when you have your phone stolen? Now, there's a really good point. We're going to talk about that with David Fang later, actually, about the way that phones are being stolen. I think the majority end up in China, but they're also then cannibalised, and there's a big hoo-ha about trying to get those internet service providers to actually lock the phones down, but they're saying that doesn't solve the problem of the phones being nicked in the first place, because if you're cannibalising them, then obviously they can take the bits out.
Right. So it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. But what happens with that when you've got your phone-based ID and, of course, your phone gets nicked?
Well, presumably someone can nick your ID, can't they?
Well, I assume so.
I'm not a tech whiz, which is why you have David Fang here, but it seems obvious to me.
Davis, yes.
Sorry.
Our very own. He's limbering up. He's doing star jumps next door.
Is he really? That's what it is. I thought he had an accident. Yeah, I mean, if someone's going to nick your phone, theoretically they can nick part of your ID, can't they?
Well, I would have thought so. And also just, you know, your ID card slips out of your wallet, you pick it up and you go into the pub. I mean, this is the other thing with the ID cards. Of course, all the kids are using them anyway. You pay money and you get an ID to prove that you're over 18 when you're not.
It's got to be fake.
Which I'm not obviously endorsing in any sense. Let's talk about this, though. This is in the Sunday Times. Reform chairman's return after 48 hours. Here it is on the right-hand side of the Sunday Times. Now, Zia Yusuf is returning to Reform UK just 48 hours after resigning as the party's chairman. He's going to take up a new role. He will not come back as chairman of Reform UK. It says this happens after peace talks with Nigel Farage. Now, the 38-year-old businessman did an interview with the Sunday Times. He said his decision to quit was a mistake. It was the result of exhaustion and working for 11 months without a day off. I know he's been working extremely hard, actually. He was speaking alongside Nigel Farage. Now, Yusuf will now effectively be doing 4 jobs. He doesn't have a formal title as yet. So he will lead the Doge unit. This is inspired by Elon Musk, of course, where the party wants to root out the wasteful spending in 10 councils that it controls. It's going to start in Kent. So that's Doge. He's going to have a stake in policy making and fundraising, and he will continue to do media appearances because he's very good in front of the media. And it goes on to say, whilst Reform hopes the rapprochement will quash questions about Farage's ability to work with others, concerns about the personality clashes at the top of the party linger. I just need to tell you the rest of this. So what Reform is going to do, according to the copy, is to split Yusuf's former role into 2. So there'll be 2 other positions made. There'll be a front-facing chairman who will tour the country, and there will be a deputy in charge of the organisational matters. There will also be a new head of operations, someone to run the party finances and help Nick Candy, who is the treasurer and the financier as well. Look, at the end of the day, Reform UK, and I would know, wouldn't I, has grown exponentially. There are 41, I think, main members of staff now within Reform. They've moved offices, of course, and they're professionalising all the time. And I know Zia, and Zia did an incredible job. He'd worked incredibly hard. He's put in the branch structure. He's brought in all those people. It's not an easy job.
No, and one has to make the observation that politics is a bloody and brutal business.
Correct.
I mean, I've worked in it in various forms over the last few decades. It is really, really tough. And it is particularly tough if you're chair of what might be classed as an insurgent political party, which is where reform has been in the political space. And that leads me on to my next point. It's starting to change. So you can make this argument here that this is a form of evolution for the political party, that it's grown very quickly and perhaps has been caught out by that and needs to actually look at how the structure changes. And it's very interesting, this piece on the front page of the Sunday Times, that Farage has decided that Yusuf's old role is, quote, too big for one man, because there's a lot of responsibility there. And you can't have, from a management point of view, one person with so much responsibility. It's dangerous, because if they walk, as we saw 48 hours ago, it creates all kinds of problems. So there does look like there's some kind of resolution here to what some might class as the Reform UK psychodrama.
Well, quite. And also, the thing is that all of the copy and many of the newspapers are saying this was based on Sarah Pochin's question about the burqa. It wasn't. I know it wasn't. It was to do with the fact that Zia was so exhausted from what he was doing. But also, I think that's right. He took on that role. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. He's a man of detail. He likes to make those decisions. And, of course, as you do that, you don't want to admit that you can't cope with the workload that has come in.
But you've got to make the observation that his posting on X/Twitter did say that her question was dumb.
He did say that.
So that's why a lot of journalists were writing the copy.
But also, he has now said that actually, even though it's not a priority for the party, he probably, if he was an MP, he would probably vote in favour of banning the burqa.
Which is interesting, and that's clarification. So, I mean, the big question, which I think is circulating this morning, is who's going to become the new chairman of Reform?
Exactly.
The runners and the riders.
The runners and the riders, and it's in Media Guido, it's all over the place, actually, and there are some strong candidates.
And it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, presumably, this is good in so much as it keeps Reform UK in the news. Someone said to me, funnily enough, David, in the pub over the weekend, I mean, I rarely go to the pub, and they said, oh, this is really damaging, don't you think? And I said, no, I don't think it is, because the majority of people are not political animals like you are, or I am, because I write and talk about this stuff for a living, all right? I don't think this, even though it's on the front page of the Telegraph and the Sunday Times today, I don't think it'll impact on Reform's poll ratings, because I think a lot of Reform support is coming from people who are just so fed up with Labour, the first year of a Labour government. They've given up on the Conservative Party for the last 14 years, and they're looking at Reform and thinking, I think this might be the answer. And internal, if you want to call them squabbles like this...
I mean, it's natural, isn't it?
Well, one, it's natural, but two, I don't necessarily think it gets the cut through to the normal voter.
I would agree with that. And it was quite interesting.
Because I'm right.
Well, OK, you're right. But also last night, when I got wind that Zia was coming back, I then tweeted and I said, welcome back. You know, he is an extraordinary individual, and I think the party is stronger with him in it.
Yes.
I think also his skill set is such that he will do a fantastic job with Doge, but also in terms of fundraising, obviously he knows a lot of high net worth individuals, which is always useful. And then Nick Candy then plays a very big role in all of that. And actually, my personal feeling is Reform is much, much stronger when you have a breadth of characters in it.
I think so. And let's remember, every political party is a coalition, isn't it?
Of course.
It's a fragile coalition because not everyone agrees with everything that party might be doing. So I'm just wondering, what I mean, going forward, in terms of whoever the new chair or indeed deputy chair of Reform UK might be, what kind of attributes do you think they need?
Well, I think it depends. So if you're looking, what this copy is saying is the chairman is going to be front-facing, and the point I made yesterday was that political parties are not a science. They are an art and a science.
I'd agree.
So you have a voluntary party, which, as you know, is held together by the very goodwill of those people who are prepared to go out in all weathers. And in fact, I heard from a lovely lady who said she was just going out canvassing yesterday in the pouring rain. Those people need a medal for going out, knocking on doors. I mean, it's soul-destroying.
I've always said this, and some MPs are brilliant at looking after their campaigners and their activists. Some just take them for granted and treat them like something on the bottom of your
And they appear only
boots.
when the election comes around.
Exactly, but if it's not for these... I mean, social media has changed things a little bit. There's a different form of campaigning going on online, but it still matters that you have men and women who are prepared on a Saturday morning to stick on their wellies and put leaflets through letterboxes. It is the backbone.
And also, but also, and maybe people don't know this, when you come to get out the vote, it's it's not about knocking on doors and working out, you know, can we persuade you to vote? What you have to know is, where is your vote?
Yes.
And the whole point of GOTV is that you then knock up your supporters.
Exactly.
And so just going back to that chairman role, it needs to be someone who can pull the voluntary party together with the professional party. It's very clear here they want someone who is front-facing, who's prepared to do media. And also, I think you've got to remember, Reform only has 5 MPs. So just in terms of the amount of talent, they haven't got the numbers of people who need to be out there front-facing, doing all the media interviews. I spoke to Nigel Farage yesterday. I mean, he's exhausted because, of course, he's everywhere doing media. I just saw him a minute ago on another channel.
So are there any obvious candidates,
Well,
David,
you'd have to look in
chair?
Guido, wouldn't you, Duncan?
For those who don't have access to Guido?
There are lots of candidates in there. For example, Anne Widdecombe is mentioned in there. Aaron Banks is mentioned in there. People you know are in there. Nick Candy is in there as well. I'm just trying to think who. Sarah Potion's in there as well.
I don't think you can have a serving MP as a chair.
Why not?
I don't think that would work.
The Tories do it.
Yeah, I just don't think it works.
And in fact, they've had 7.
No, because
they've had 7 chairmen since 2000. About 3 years, I think.
4 leaders in 4 years.
Yeah.
I think it gets muddy if you have a serving MP as a chair. I think it needs to be someone who is.
Well, that's interesting actually, because under the Articles of Association, and I read this somewhere else, I believe that actually it is clear somewhere I read that they need to be different appointments. They can't hold multiple offices.
And I think that's right. So I think it's someone who exudes warmth, who is a very, very sound and shrewd communicator, who looks good in front of a camera, and who also can bring different elements of the party together, so they can put an arm around an MP and just maybe have a quiet word. Equally, make that political activist who's been doing the leafleting on a wet Saturday morning feel that they're the best person in the world
100%.
and they're most loved.
100%.
That's the kind of person you need, David.
It certainly is, Duncan. I would agree with you wholeheartedly. But of course, it's in the gift of Nigel Farage. And I mean, the question we were asked yesterday is it urgent? Does this person need to be in place immediately? The response I gave to that to a journalist was
question.
Well, given there are no current elections taking place, one might argue that actually Reform has the benefit of time, that you need to make the right decision, which I think is the right thing. But equally, we've seen with other political parties, when you have a void, that void gets filled.
Yeah. So for my view would be this. Yes, it needs to happen inside the next 5 days. There needs to be a new chair appointed and a deputy chair, and alongside that, I think, look, there's only 5 MPs, and that's fine. You can't outline a full shadow cabinet based on MPs, but what you can do is you can start outlining spokespeople for certain key areas. So, you know, there might be an obvious contender sitting opposite me who knows a bit about health.
Yes.
There's an argument to say that Richard Tice is probably the person to be the, if you like, the economic spokesperson.
Yes. The Chancellor, Shadow Chancellor.
Shadow Chancellor, if you want to use that term. And you could go through various key members of the party, not just MPs, and find talent and say, well, look, I think, you know, you would be a good person to talk about this given your background. And I think that would then do 2 things. One, it would remove the focus on Nigel Farage as being, I mean, other members obviously get media time, but I'll tell you, most journalists considering box office, so you always go for Farage if you want to get a guest, right? Broaden that out, so there is an issue about the economy, get more of Tice on there, but also it then takes the evolution of Reform to the next stage, which is about, look, we are, I'm not saying it's not a serious political party, but it's the next thing the obvious next thing to do, isn't it?
Yes.
We've got spokespeople on the arts, we've got spokespeople on the economy, we've got people on health, we've got people on security issues, and just broaden that out.
I would agree. Also, for Nigel Farage, of course, he's very much in the past been a one-man band. So again, this is a learning curve for him because, of course, as the organisation grows, then there is more accountability. You have to do more things. And, of course, you've then got things like HR involved when you have that number of staff. So suddenly it starts to take on a very different kind of feeling, like any organisation. This is quite interesting. Sean in Gloucester. Good morning, David. Good morning to you, Sean. How can you trust any politician that has never had any real-world experience? Career politicians are one of the downfalls of this current lot. What is clear to me and to many others is that Reform has a clear advantage in this and are giving people a genuine choice at last.
Yeah, I think a lot of people share that view, and I've always, I don't Well, it's difficult because if you look at Labour, for example, there's no one in the Labour Party, I would wager, who's ever worked on a farm, right?
No.
So
none of them have actually run a company.
Well, this is true, but I mean, one of my things at the moment is I want to keep in the spotlight the situation facing farmers in this country, because it's gone off the board a little bit. We haven't had the protests, the inheritance tax is coming through. There's been this absolute stain on our country and society where it's documented now farmers have ended their lives because of this, all right? And we're not talking about it in the way that we should. It's devastating. It's a tragedy. And I just want to make the point that we end up with an Environment Secretary, Steve Reed, who's the MP for Croydon, you know, that well-known rural area, who's has got no experience of farming life or rural communities. And I think that actually damages his position and his party. So the idea that you have a political party, in this case it might be Reform, who start appointing people to be spokespeople on certain issues, and those people actually have got some skin in the game. One, it's obvious.
100%.
But two, it's powerful.
But also, you know, the point, and I've always said this, particularly about health, for example, if you are the Secretary of State for Health, you ought to know something about health.
Yeah.
And it used to be like that, even in the management of hospitals, that the head of the hospital was a medical superintendent, so they were medically trained. And I kind of think we need to go back to that.
I think you're right.
You know, the idea that you're a politician, you do PPE at Oxford and Cambridge, and then suddenly you're in charge of the defence budget is ridiculous.
I did some work a few years ago with Maria Caulfield, who was a Conservative MP for Lewis, but she's a nurse, right?
Yes, that's right.
She was a health minister, so she was able to talk about stuff having been on the front line,
great.
and I think that is so important, and we need more of that in politics.
Lots of messages about this one. Good morning, David. No name on this. I just wanted to say I'm really, in capital letters, happy that Zia is back in Reform. That is it. Oh, and I love your shows. So thank you very much indeed for that. This is interesting. Mike from Herne Bay, good morning to you. Am I the only one who thinks there's a role for Dominic Cummings in Reform?
Oh. Well, it depends how many narcissists you want in one political party. That would be my reaction to that.
Let's go with no then, shall we?
Well, it's just a view.
I mean, it's very interesting also, of course, I know there are lots of MPs in other parties who are thinking, hang on a minute, perhaps now is the time to cross the floor.
Having worked with various MPs in my life, and possibly again in the future, who knows, what is interesting, there is a particular kind of MP whose life is dedicated to being a Member of Parliament, who I genuinely believe would not be able to function unless they had that role going on. And I think there'll be some of them, probably about half a dozen to a dozen Conservative MPs on the right of the party who would be broadly sympathetic to Reform's, what we know as Reform's aims and objectives. No, I'm not going to name them.
Come on, name them.
That would be
Give me one name. Who would you most like to see defect?
Well, it's not about who I'd like to see. I think Suella Braverman will probably join Reform by the end of the year. I think Mark Francois would probably have a pop at Reform in terms of trying to join by the end of the year. And it's about career survival, but also being broadly sympathetic to Reform's aims and objectives. And I think Reform would have to think very carefully about accepting them, because at the moment, Reform has got to this place rightly by being, if you like, this insurgent party, but also having a pop at the Conservatives, and rightly so, for their track in government, for some of the things that they did and didn't do. Then all of a sudden to, let's say, accept the current MP for Fareham, Suella Braverman, and just go, come and join us. Well, why would you want that person in your party?
Well, and also you make a really good point, which is actually if Reform is then appealing to working class voters, which we know it is, so those Labour heartlands or traditional Labour heartlands, by bringing in someone like Suella Braverman, what does that do in terms of the outward projection of the image of that party? So all of those things need to be weighed up.
Yes, and also I think Reform does have a challenge coming down the tracks, which is it can say a certain number of things to people maybe in what you used to call the red wall that would appeal to them, but also it needs to keep that kind of what I would call southeast of England former Tory voter happy. And I don't think you can only get so far with that. Someone said to me the other day, which I thought was really interesting, well, Reform said they'd scrap the two-child benefit cap and they'd nationalise steel. Are they becoming socialists?
Yes.
And I found myself going, that's a really interesting perception.
It is.
You know, so how do you tackle that?
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Lots of messages coming in. I just want to read this one. John and Bakewell. Good morning, David. Isn't this a national scandal that lots of NHS hospitals are refusing to treat children who go to a private school? It seems not a lot of papers are reporting this. I thought the point of the NHS was to treat everyone equally. I am going to talk about that after this break because it's a really important story. Don't go anywhere. This is Weekend Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm joined by Duncan Barks this morning. We're talking about what's in the press this morning. There's another massive, massive story in the Sunday Times, actually. White House warns number 10 over the China embassy. This is a really big story, actually. The White House has warned Downing Street against allowing a Chinese embassy to be built near sensitive London financial centres. It's not an embassy, it is a super embassy. It is absolutely vast. It was blocked by the previous government because of intelligence warnings about the locations and the espionage risk, basically because it sits on the site of the Royal Mint. Now, if you don't know where that is, it's right by Tower Bridge. It is between the City of London and Canary Wharf. It is there. And it is a fascinating part of London, but it's also very strategically important because of its proximity to a sensitive hub of critical communication cables. These cables basically go underneath that side and connect the city to Canary Wharf. It lies directly between those two financial hubs. Now, the United States has waded in this morning, and of course the Conservative government pushed it into the long grass. The Labour government has decided to reopen this, and we think it's because of essentially they've been lobbied by the Chinese government. Now, the United States says it's deeply concerned about providing China with potential access to sensitive communications of one of our closest allies. Now, obviously, we're going through a US trade deal at the moment. Now, the US was asked what impact approving the super embassy would have on the US trade deal. The White House then seemed to issue a veiled threat. This is what they said. The United States expects that all decisions will be taken with our, both US and UK, national security interests in mind, and after thorough mitigation as recommended and approved by counterintelligence professionals. Now, we do understand that President Trump has previously told Starmer to stop that embassy being requisitioned, and the issue has now been raised in those trade deals. I mean, I don't think it takes a genius to work out that sticking a super embassy between the city and Canary Wharf is a bad idea.
No, I wrote a piece about this for the Daily Express website a few months ago because it appeared, and it's Angela Rayner who's got to make a decision about this ultimately by the end of May. So this is dragging on. And, I mean, there have been protests about this because you have quite a few human rights activists here in the UK who have protested against China in the past, saying we have big concerns about this because effectively this mega embassy, this super super embassy could be used as an HQ to suppress some of our activities, you know, on UK soil. So there's that to consider as well. And also there's the optics of it. You pointed over there. So talk listeners and viewers, here we are in London Bridge. You've got the Thames, you've got the Tower of London just over there.
Just there.
Yeah, historic London. And the idea is within literally a couple of hundred yards, you would have this big super embassy being built. No other country really, apart from, you could argue a little bit about the US embassy over by Vauxhall. You know,
but that's the US.
But it's also a different part of London. The optics of having something quite near, one, the City of London, our financial hub, and two, the Tower of London, I just think it makes me feel very uneasy. So I don't think this should be allowed to go ahead.
I would agree with you.
I think we can reasonably argue that China are a hostile nation in many ways.
Yep.
And I think this needs to be handled very carefully. Whether or not Starmer is prepared to kind of say to the White House, actually, we get this and we won't allow it because...
Well, like the Chagos Islands.
Well, exactly. I don't have a great deal of faith in it. But, I mean, the pressure is on Angela Rayner to make a decision about this and to make the right decision, which is, sorry, China, you can't have it there.
Exactly right. It was bought in 2018 by China. They've obviously been in conversation with David Lammy. Crikey. Then also, what do you make of this? Within a fortnight of Rachel Reeves returning from a visit to China, an official visit to China this year, Scotland Yard and Tower Hamlets Council suddenly dropped their objections to the project.
Funny that. Who would have thought
It's very odd timing, isn't it?
Very odd indeed.
And of course, Tower Hamlets was opposed to it, which is the local council where it sits on, which obviously takes in Canary Wharf as well. But my nervousness is that I just don't know that people like Angela Rayner or indeed David Lammy have this country's national interests at heart.
The track record so far of this Labour government is not good, is it?
No.
You mentioned the Chagos, that's the obvious example, isn't it?
Yes, which of course they're trying to fight at the moment through the Lords.
Give it away, here you are, and we'll give you some money to take it.
Not just some money, a lot of money on a 99-year lease. The whole thing makes absolutely no sense. Thanks, Duncan, for the moment. Right, I'm going to... let me just ask you, actually, which political leader do you trust the least? Gosh, there's a lot to choose from. 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well, at talkTV. Now, after the break, I want to talk about childhood vaccinations, really important topic, actually. They've fallen, these are for deadly diseases, they've fallen to a 10-year low. That is a major problem. We are starting to see measles coming back into this country in a big way. And I also want to talk about this story, a boy of 8 who was turned away by the NHS because he goes to a private school. Totally unacceptable. This is Weekend Breakfast.
Keir Starmer himself in the last week has talked about this country being an island of strangers. There's no better way to start to change that than to get rid of such items like a burqa, which is so distinctive and so divisive and actually quite a threatening thing for British people to pass on the street. I was a magistrate for 20 years, Kevin. If anybody had walked into my courts wearing such an item, proceedings would have been stopped until the item was removed.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 6:52 already on Sunday, June the 8th. Duncan Barks joins me this morning. Lots of messages coming in. David, Jeremy Clarkson should be Environment Minister. That's Richard. Thank you for that. Good morning, Dr. David. Re the Reform Party. If Dominic Cummings goes to the Reform Party, it would cause big problems. He is a backstabber who caused the downfall of Boris Johnson. I do so love your shows. Julie in Devon, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much. Dr. David, this is Sam in Barnsley. Good morning, Sam in Barnsley. Please get Jacob Rees-Mogg in the crew. All the best. What do you think of that?
Ooh.
I do like his style, his sartorial style, and he is almost from a different... I mean, he's from a different era.
I once went to a... Can I mention this? I can mention it. There's nothing dodgy about it.
Did you go for dinner?
I did.
Did you?
I went for dinner.
To the baronial home?
No, not at his place. I went to. I'm just choosing my words carefully, so not.
Where did you go, Duncan?
I went to an MP's flat for a dinner with some other MPs, okay, and a couple of other people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I knew you'd say that. And one of them was Jacob Rees-Mogg.
I see.
First time I ever met him.
Whose house was it?
Not telling you.
Oh, right.
And I thought I'm going to spend at least 2 hours in his company. It's got to be an act. All right, this is what I thought.
Not.
You know, I thought he's going to give away something. This kind of pretense that you see. And I spent 2.5 hours having some lovely roast lamb and some nice wine, and I was just staring at him most of the time. And I thought there's got to be a chink in the armour there, and it's not an act.
No,
it is him.
Yes.
And I walked away afterwards, having a nice belly full of roast lamb and claret, just thinking, do you know what? Sometimes you learn things in life, and I've learned something there, because I was prepared to think this is all just a sham, and he is actually like that, and I quite enjoyed his company.
Yeah, I was in the European Parliament with his sister, Annunziata, and actually, it's not an act. No. That's just him. And I quite like the fact, you know, he is true to himself. I quite like that.
And I tell you why I like some of that is because the pressure to conform and not be perceived as a bit of an oddity and just to be like another MP, another politician in a nice shiny suit is quite great, and he refuses to do it. Whether or not he would be a scalp for Reform UK if he crossed the floor, I come back to the point I made earlier. If you one of your attack lines, and this is what Reform have done in the past, just said, oh well, look at the Conservatives, look what they did over 14 years. Do you really want some of their prominent MPs to join you?
Well, that's the point I was trying to make earlier, actually. This is Christina in Spain. Hola, guapo, ¿qué tal? Thank you very much, David. You and Duncan are a match made in heaven. Oh, I've lost it now. You're a match made in heaven. We wouldn't trust a doctor who had never studied or practiced medicine, so why would we trust an MP in charge of the NHS who doesn't have a Scooby about anything remotely connected to the field of medicine? Fab show. It's a really good point, that I watched Wes Streeting doing an interview, and I thought, you actually don't know what you're talking about. He really didn't understand the subject that he'd been given, and it's all very well talking about we're going to bring in this new technology or whatever else, but if you don't understand how the doctors and nurses actually get the results, then how on earth can you actually have something sensible to say?
You can only go so far when you have a briefing note written for you by a researcher, unless you've got, and I hate the term, the lived experience. You do risk coming across as being not remotely authentic.
Let's just talk very quickly about this. Child vaccinations for deadly diseases slumped to a 10-year low. This is in the Times this morning. It's a big story, actually. Front page, actually. Children's jabs slumped to a 10-year low. The number of children being vaccinated against routine diseases, including measles and whooping cough, have collapsed to the lowest levels in more than a decade. This is a huge problem because of what we call vaccine hesitancy. This is where parents are very worried about the vaccines because of all sorts of conspiracy theories and so on. It's fallen below 95% coverage, which is what you need for what we call herd immunity to make sure these kids are actually protected. Now, the upshot of this, 2,911 confirmed measles cases in England. That's the highest since 2012. And unsurprisingly, they're in Birmingham and they're in London as well. There are 14,894 confirmed cases of whooping cough. 11 babies have died. So kids die when you don't immunise them against this. And of course, children are supposed to have the MMR jab, the 6-in-1 vaccine against diphtheria, tetanus, whooping cough, polio, Haemophilus influenza type B, Hep B, pneumococcus, and they also get vaccines against meningitis B and C. Now, the big problem here is, and I reported on this when I worked on Watchdog Health Check about Andrew Wakefield and that spurious report, we saw MMR rates drop dramatically. We saw the upshot of that, and of course that meant that kids got very, very sick, and some of them had long-term illnesses as a result, and of course kids will die. And the other problem is that the COVID vaccine rollout has completely trashed people's trust in the vaccines. And I think in some cases for the right reasons.
So, you know, you've got skin in this game, you're a medical man. How do you turn this around? What's the answer?
I think you have to provide clear, concise information, show data to the parents, but also, of course, I think you have to disassociate the COVID vaccine, which was a trial vaccine. It had never been used before. It was done by parallel processing, so they expedited the safety profile. We know those vaccines now, caused all sorts of problems, including myocarditis, which my mum got. So I've seen it firsthand. So I think we need to sort of disassociate from those vaccines for COVID and then the ones we've used for generations.
Yeah, it's one big blob now, isn't it? It's just vaccine, and actually you need to break it down.
But it's a really important, it's a really important story, and actually I'm desperate to get kids vaccinated because it protects them for life.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely bang on the money. And presumably, when you said, unsurprisingly, London and Birmingham, we have to actually bring into that particular conversation the fact that more diverse communities are going to be more reluctant to allow their child or children to have the vaccines.
Exactly right. And of course many of these kids are left unprotected, and it's not fair because of course this is the thing, we don't see the sequelae of those very dangerous diseases because for the most part kids are vaccinated. So it's a rude wake-up call actually. Thank you very much for the moment, Duncan. I'm still going to talk about that boy who was turned away by the NHS because he goes to a private school. Absolutely dreadful. Keep your messages coming in, please, as well. Which political leader do you trust the least? There are a lot to choose from. 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can also message us on X as well at talkTV. Also, don't forget, you can also send a voice note as well. Very keen to get all of those coming in. We're going to be talking about more of this morning's top stories after this break. Don't you dare go anywhere. This is Weekend Breakfast. This is Talk.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay!
87222, start your message with the word talk. Who would you send to space and why?
The person I would love to send to space would be Mr. Keir Starmer. And then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space on a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Oh, no, I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists, there is just so much to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question, so I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, so you get the job, yeah? Come on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what... There's no.
I think David Lammy would be the person I'd want to send up in space and never come back again.
Yeah, the problem is how much would the bill be for him to munch through whatever food on the way there?
Hey, it worked.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good morning to you. Just after 7 o'clock already on Sunday, June the 8th. I'm David Bull, and this is Weekend Breakfast. The weather much better than it was yesterday. Hopefully it remains so. Thanks ever so much for your company. Now, it's Sunday, allegedly. That means I have great news for you. It's National Best Friends Day. Life wouldn't be the same without best friends. They are the friends, as we know, that you can count on at a moment's notice. These are the ones that love and laugh and support and cherish you in both the good and the bad times. Today is the day where you can celebrate National Best Friends Day. That's really very good, Dave. Really very excellent. Also, it's National Name Your Poison Day. Yes, this is a fun day to grab a few friends, head out to a bar, and get a drink. Now, it's a day where you're encouraged to actually choose something you wouldn't normally order. So go on, have a tipple, and obviously what I have to say is drink responsibly, of course. It seems very odd to be singing that at, 7 o'clock in the morning, but there we are. It's also British Heart Week this week, a vital event dedicated to raising awareness about the importance of heart health and, of course, the importance of heart care generally. British Heart Week.
Heartbeat, why do you miss when my baby kisses me?
Ah, there you go, Buddy Holly version, I'm being told. Right, let's move on to this hour's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
Right, some new ones for you this hour. On this day in 1376, it was the death of Edward of Woodstock, known as Edward the Black Prince, the eldest son of Edward III. He was the hero of Crécy and Poitiers and the upholder of the liberties of the English people. Although he had no connection to the city of Leeds, there is actually a huge statue, apparently, in Leeds city centre. Also, on this day in 1652, the birth of William Dampier. Who was he? Well, he was an English explorer who turned to piracy. His exploits netted him £200,000 worth of treasure in only 2 voyages. And on this day in 1772, Robert Stevenson, the Scottish engineer, was born. He built all sorts of things, including Bell Rock Lighthouse, the first of its type in Scotland. And those are this hour's fascinating facts.
Weekend breakfast, feeling so alive. David and Duncan, let the good times thrive. The full team's here. Who could ask for more?
Well, a very good morning to you. We've given the game away, of course. Duncan Barks, extraordinaire, I nearly called him there, actually. I'll call him that anyway. Joins me this morning. Extraordinaire.
Extraordinaire.
It's extraordinary to get you here.
Well, yes. I was very well behaved last night.
Yes, so I see.
I was.
I got one picture of a pint of beer from you.
Yeah, your very cheeky tweet on X/Twitter saying, well, I can get him out of the pub. And
well, it was honest and accurate.
Well, yeah. I took the dog for a walk, and we might have stopped in the Little Monster tap.
And you got kidnapped into the pub.
A libation. Well, he knows his way there.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, because they have a big jar of doggy treats.
Does he sit on a stool as well?
Oh, I'm known as the fat man with a little black dog.
Right.
So we have a sausage dog.
Right.
Well, mostly sausage, called Bertie.
Of course.
So there's me, like, down the high street, and it's just dragging this small black thing. And he's basically like a lord. So I sit on the bar stool and he leaps up on my lap. I'll tell you what, David, if the current Mrs. Barks ever decides to get rid of me, I'm going to get a dog, because they are like a babe magnet. It's unbelievable. All these women who never normally talk to me come up and go, can I stroke your dog? And I have to stop myself saying anything that could be misconstrued as dodgy.
And you have to be very careful these days.
I was very well behaved last night. I had 1.5 pints of quite a weak ale.
Right, well done.
Yes.
Excellent.
And
Excellent.
I was sober by 6.
Excellent. Thanks ever so much for all your comments and sending stuff in. I just want to show you some postbox toppers. Haven't done those for a few weeks, have we? Gerald Austin, thank you very much for these. You believe you've sent in a couple for us. If we can get those up, it would be rather marvellous to see them. Here we go. Look at that. Rupert the Bear in full glory on a postbox in a village, which I think is rather brilliant. And obviously you've got, who's that? The elephant. And then you've got Badger, haven't you? Who's the elephant?
I don't know, who is the elephant?
Well, that's Rupert the bear.
I didn't know Rupert was
anyway,
a friend who was an elephant. That is a really good picture.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's all handcrafted as well.
Yeah.
And Gerald sent me this one as well, which was to show the sun is coming out this week. And that is also, what's his name? The elephant is called Edward Trunk. I don't know that one. No. Anyway, the sun is coming out. Gerald, thanks ever so much for that. I also just want to say happy 50th birthday to a building.
Oh, yes.
I know it's slightly weird, but this building is really important in my history, and here it is. This is the building of Willis Faber. The Willis Building, as it's now called, it was originally the Willis Faber and Jumar regional headquarters, and that building is the reason that I grew up in Suffolk. So my father was relocated to that building, to the regional office of Willis, which is an insurance broking company. It's one of the earliest buildings designed by Norman Foster. And actually, he cut his teeth on it. It was constructed between 1970 and 1975. It was considered a landmark in the development of a high-tech architectural style. Now, it's clad, as you can see, in this sort of black glass. Yeah. And at night, then all the black glass disappears because, of course, the lights illuminate from within, and so it completely changes. This is the dark glass, a curtain wall and lack of right angle. It mirrors the Art Deco Express building in Manchester. Now, my understanding of this also, it was opened by Macmillan in 1975. It is also the newest building to be given Grade 1 listed status.
Excellent.
Yeah, brilliant British architecture, great design. And actually, it stood the test of time. And when I was a child, there was a swimming pool in the bottom.
Right.
And we used to go swimming there.
So that's in Ipswich?
That's in Ipswich.
You are a proper Suffolk man, aren't you?
I am, yeah. So I grew up there. And when Ipswich Town won the FA Cup, I was there watching them. This was in, what, 75? Was it 75? I don't know. Was it? Oh, we'll check which. Anyway, yeah. So I grew up there. So I think we moved there when I was 4.
Okay.
Which was a long time ago, let me tell you.
Long time ago. Did they have horse and cart?
That's right, yes, they had a 78, thank you very much, 78. So I was, what, 9?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it? Yeah. Right. No. Yes, I can't do that.
It's too early.
It's far too early. Right, if you are just waking up, let me just whiz you through this morning's papers. Kemi Badenoch is... this is going back to the Burka. Kemi Badenoch is saying, let bosses ban burkas in office. The bosses should have the right to ban staff from wearing burkas and other face coverings in the workplace, according to Kemi Badenoch. She then starts talking about Sharia law. She talks about... And, of course, these courts have no legal standing in the United Kingdom. She also talks about... sort of a huge diverse range of topics, including the ECHR, and of course, as we know, she's commissioned this report to be done by Lord Wolfson. She talks about digital ID cards. She says she's coming round to the idea of it. Duncan and I were just saying, well, I'm not really sure what original thought she's had.
No, I do think she's in a challenging position, being the current leader of the Conservative Party. For that, I don't think they should replace her, though. I think that would then say that Starmer
she's getting better, isn't she?
And Farage can say, oh, look, we got rid of a Tory leader. But I'm not clear on what Kemi Badenoch stands for.
I don't think she is.
And I think until she decides what she's about, whatever Badenochism is and what it looks like, I think she's going to continue to struggle. But I would say the last Prime Minister's questions, I thought she was the best I've ever seen.
I'd agree.
I thought she was on fire, and I want to see more of that from the Leader of the Opposition.
But she says, and I think this is fair, it takes time to get into. I mean, you are then thrust into the spotlight. You have no experience of doing that. It must be very difficult.
And it goes back to something we were talking about in the last hour when we were talking about whoever the new chair of Reform might be. You know, Kemi has become leader of a party that is split. You know, there's a story in some of today's papers about, you know, there are some, they use the term wet, some wet Tory MPs who might be better off in the Lib Dems. So, and you've also got some MPs in her party which are more right of centre. So she's got this split party. You've got activists and donors who are pretty bruised and battered after last July's electoral defeat. She's got to bring all of that together. It's not an easy gig. And then she's the person that journalists like me just say, hang on, what do you think about this? Or why have you done that? You know, it's a very difficult job. Yeah. But then again, she wanted it, so, you know, she goes with the territory. But, I mean, it's...
do you think she realised how much hard work it is?
No.
No, neither do I.
No. It's really hard. It's really hard. It's hard to be an MP, and it's even harder to be a leader of a political party.
I think also the fact is that it just never stops, because the news never stops. And in the old days, of course, you didn't have the 24-hour news cycle, and that's changed everything.
Completely. You're never off duty.
You are never off duty, and you constantly have to react.
And the days have changed. So there would have been a time where you could probably, after let's say 7, 8 o'clock at night, just breathe easy a little bit and not worry about anything until maybe your press spokesperson phoned you up at 5:30 in the morning going, this is what's in the newspapers. You had a little bit of downtime, but now, as you mentioned, with social media, all it takes is a journalist at 10:30 at night to put a message out about their latest exclusive because they've discovered some MP is going to defect to another party, and that's your night gone, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So it has changed completely. Not easy, not that this should make any difference, but, you know, she's got a young family as well, so she's a mum, and all of that is rolled into it.
It is indeed. You mentioned Reform UK. It's in both papers, actually. It's on the Telegraph. Yusuf returns to Reform 2 days after exit. The Sunday Times says Reform chairman's return after 48 hours. If you haven't caught up with this, Zia Yusuf is returning to Reform UK just 48 hours after resigning as the party's chairman. He is going to take up a new role in the party, according to Nigel Farage. Now, he did an interview with the Sunday Times. The 38-year-old businessman, and I forget he is quite so young actually, said his decision to quit was a mistake. It was the result of exhaustion and working for 11 months without a day off. Now, according to Farage, Zia Yusuf will now be doing 4 jobs. He doesn't have an official title. One of those jobs is Doge, which we know is about actually cost-cutting within the councils, which they have won. Also, he will have a stake in policy making, fundraising, which obviously is important for any political party, and also media appearances for the party as well. And I think he's had some quite impressive media appearances, actually, including Question Time, which is not an easy show to do. Now, his former role is going to be split into 2. There will be a front-facing chairman who will tour the country, which we spoke about earlier. There will be a deputy in charge of organisational matters. There is also going to be a head of operations. There will be someone to run the finances, and this is to run alongside Nick Candy, the treasurer, and fundraising. I mean, we talked about this earlier, but actually this is professionalisation of the party, isn't it? And it's making, you know, when Reform UK was founded, and I've said this before, which it was founded in my kitchen, you know, it was basically the 3 of us. And it has grown exponentially. And so if you've got 41 full-time staff in that, and it is now a serious business, I mean, you know, a political party, and it needs to be run properly.
Well, it's evolution, isn't it? And what I find interesting about this story, we didn't touch on this in the last hour, there has been a narrative that's developed over the last several years that Farage is unable to work with other people.
There has.
Does this now prove that that is not the case?
I hope so.
I mean, I'd love to know what the conversation was about. I mean, it might just be simply, I'm absolutely knackered with this. I mean, you've got to remember that Zia Yusuf got a hell of a lot of abuse on social media because he was a Muslim.
Terrible.
You know, and I mean, I made the point earlier that politics...
Which is totally unacceptable.
It's completely unacceptable. Politics is a brutal and bloody business. It is awful. I mean, I've worked in various aspects of it. And without sounding patronising, even at the age of 38, you don't necessarily have the life experience to be able to hack some of the stuff that you have to contend with. But does this prove now that Nigel Farage is able to work with people?
Well, yes, and also I think from Zia Yusuf's point of view, of course, he came in, he wanted to prove that he was the man, and he has done that by making sure the branches were set up and everything. It's very difficult also if you go in to say, I can't cope.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Well, we don't like saying that, do we?
No.
It's admitting defeat. And also what is interesting here is that it appears, according to the Sunday Times, that Farage is now looking at this and breaking up the role that the chairman had previously, because it is a massive role.
It is a massive role.
And I mean, there was some stories knocking around saying that Zia Yusuf, with his Goldman Sachs background, was perhaps a little bit brusque with people, didn't have the kind of the warmth that's needed to deal with all of these politicians, David, with their very fragile egos. All of these volunteers who need stroking and being told that they're marvellous. They do. And so that job, you need to be a good organiser, which is one thing. You might be great with a spreadsheet, but you might not necessarily be the best person to sit down with a grumpy activist or indeed a grumpy MP. You know, so what we're seeing here in some of these stories is that perhaps the role is going to be broken down into bits. So, you know, someone can take care of making sure the bills are paid. Someone is good at organising people. Someone can actually have a quiet word in the ear of a slightly rogue MP and just bring them back into life.
I think that chairman role also has to have emotional intelligence.
Absolutely.
And that is key to this, because you are dealing, as you say, with egos, whether they are members of Parliament, but equally someone who's given up their Saturday morning to do a coffee morning or to go out in the pouring rain, which I have done a lot of, a lot in my lifetime, delivering leaflets, banging on doors, all that kind of stuff. And actually, that's how you win elections. It's all that stuff. It's the shoe leather. It's banging on doors. It's knowing where your vote is. And it's not sexy. Any of that
well,
is
no, it's not
sexy.
And whoever becomes the new chairman needs to have a very good bedside manner, I would suggest.
I would also suggest the same. So that's Zia Yusuf there. Let's turn our attention to this. This is the front page of the Mail, and it is a really shocking story this morning. A boy 8 turned away by NHS because he is a private school pupil. Now, an outraged mother has accused the NHS of shocking discrimination after her 8-year-old son was denied vital treatment only because he goes to a private school. So this is just the most extraordinary story. The mother of the 8-year-old blamed Labour's war on private schools for emboldening NHS managers to deny her child help with his crippling joint condition. So the story is this. Her son was referred to a paediatrician at Kingston Hospital in southwest London. He was struggling to hold a pen. He couldn't write properly, so obviously this was functionally limiting for him in school. He had other mobility issues. He went for this appointment referred by the GP. Now, at the hospital appointment, he had to fill in a form. And the form said, where does your child go to school? Then a few days later, she received a text message saying the child had been declined the next appointment with occupational health therapists. So she was absolutely livid about this and went and found what had gone on. The specialist unit had written a letter to her GP saying, and I quote, "We are unable to see this child as we do not provide a service to school-aged children who attend an independent school. We are only commissioned to provide a service to the mainstream schools." Now, by the way, the brother of that child had already been treated by the NHS for exactly the same hypermobile condition. It's unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable. You pay for the NHS, it's free at the point of need, it's universality. Those are the core founding principles of the NHS.
Unacceptable and disgraceful.
Yes.
For the reasons that you've just outlined, but also this is about, we've heard about two-tier justice in this country. This is starting to look like a two-tier NHS where somewhere along the lines you've got, I don't know, some managers or someone just going, well, you know what, if that kid goes to a private school, clearly the parent or the parents are loaded so they don't need to use the services of the NHS. How dare they?
I would agree.
We all pay into the pot, we all pay national insurance, and it's there. But looking at this story, this is not an isolated case. If you look at the inside pages, you've got the mother of an autistic girl in Somerset told the Mail on Sunday her daughter was denied access to NHS mental health services and was told, and this is the quote, "If you can afford the school fees, you should pay privately. If you had kept your child at the local authority primary school, she would have been supported." Right? That's in Somerset. It is understood that in Norfolk, a child was refused a much-needed standing frame by the NHS because he went to private school. The Mail also says it understands that other NHS trusts have also refused occupational therapy treatment to children because they attend independent schools.
Do you remember we did this story about kids who were in hospital who obviously can't have education, so they brought in tutors for those kids, and the ones that went to private school were denied the tutoring. Again, what are we doing?
So the other thing I can't find in this particular, and it's a double-page spread inside the Mail on the front page of the Mail on Sunday, I can't find anyone from any NHS trust giving comment or reaction to this story, which is worrying in itself. I mean, someone do correct me if they can find it. But this has been allowed, this has created a situation, and you're right, it's about the policy that was introduced to put VAT on private school fees.
Taxing them even more, even though they've alleviated the burden on the state system.
But it's a class war, isn't it? Of course it is class war, and how dare they?
I know.
I mean, adults can take things in their stride. Why should a child have to suffer as a result of what appears to be this, well, this Labour policy, which is just like, oh, well, clearly. I mean, I know people who have sent their child to private school, and the mum's taken on 2 jobs in order to do it. This idea
they
that
drive
you can,
the worst car, they don't have Sky TV, they don't go on holiday because this is their priority.
It's the worst example of class war, and the people who are losing out here are kids, right?
Yeah.
Who have got
I mean,
absolutely...
I feel so strongly that the people who made those decisions need to be fired.
Well, that's why I said, where's the comment? Where's the reaction from any of these NHS trusts? Either denying it or saying, oh, there was a misunderstanding or whatever. I mean, look, there's a copy of a letter here. It's blatant. From Kingston and Richmond NHS Foundation Trust. Thank you for referring the above child to the Richmond Children's Occupational Therapy Service. Unfortunately, we are unable to see this child as we do not provide a service to school-aged children who attend an independent school. We are only commissioned to provide a service to the mainstream schools within Richmond. Now, that suggests, if that is true, that letter, that somewhere there is a document that says, right, well, you can give it to these kids, but not to those kids. How on earth is that fair? And then, and I'm ranting a bit, but
no,
you're not. It's made me angry. If you go to page 14 of the Mail, right, there's an exclusive story. NHS recoups just £29 million for treating European patients whilst forking out £1 billion in return. Right? Look at that.
Yeah.
So they can find the money.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, and not have to recoup the money, the best part of a million quid.
But you're right. So this is...
kids lose out.
Yes, and it's an ideology. So already, and I was looking up the numbers, 11,000 pupils have left the independent sector since Labour imposed that ridiculous VAT on school fees. And, of course, the bit that doesn't make any sense is they're already paying for state education. Yeah. And, of course, that alleviates the burden. And I think the last time I looked, they kept saying, well, it's going to actually save, what, 1.5 billion. Well, it's not, actually, because in terms of the state saving anyway, it's 4.5 billion by keeping them out of the independent sector. It's pure ideology and it needs to stop. And I would fire the whole blinking lot.
Yeah, I think I'd agree.
OK, good. That's that sorted then. Good morning, David. ID and digital ID. I don't understand why we need to have an ID card in the UK. I know the government will convince a lot of people about how some magical ID card will stop immigration, etc. But for me, this is hardcore raver. Good morning. But for me, it is a slippery slope. I would agree as well. Hi, David. Great show. Thank you. This is Francis in Sussex. Good morning to you. My daughter is a teacher. She said that children who had private speech therapy don't get seen by NHS speech therapists. She works in a local authority school, not private. I mean...
Really?
Yeah. David, the private school boy denied NHS treatment, yet foreign nationals flying to give birth or other NHS treatment. And that's Tony Tucker in Barrow-in-Furness. You're right, Tony. Absolutely spot on. Good morning, David. Oh, back to Willis Faber, by the way, in the building I showed you. Good morning, David. This is Tony near John O'Groats. When we lived in Hove, our next-door neighbour worked at Willis Faber in Ipswich, and now we've moved to the far north of Scotland. One of our new friends up here also worked there. There you go. Oh. See, Suffolk.
Yeah, the Suffolk Mafia.
The Suffolk Mafia in Willis Faber.
It's far and wide-reaching.
You have no idea at all. Let me just... oh, yes, let's do one more. This is Alan Connon. Good morning from sunny Vietnam. Ooh, we can go off some people. What a great show, and team you and Duncan May. Oh, that's nice.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a fully paid up member of Reform, and the last thing Reform need is people like Jacob Rees-Mogg coming over. They had their chance, they blew it. All the best from Alan C., a British citizen in HCMC. Wow, lovely. Thanks very much. Keep all those messages coming in. Now, the question this morning, which political leader do you trust the least? Choose carefully. 03444 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. You can also text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV, and you can also send a voice note as well. So many stories to get through this morning. I'm going to be talking about the government struggling to cut foreign aid spent on asylum hotels. I want to tell you about the numbers of non-DOMs who've actually left the UK already because of the incumbent Labour government. Also, I want to talk about what France is doing in terms of trying to stop the boats. Lots coming up. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
clearly there was some difference of opinion of some sort over the Burka question, but this is, I think, the inexperience that shows. I mean, he's come in, done all this hard work, created the structures, all this stuff. Politics isn't like banking. It is a very different thing. You drive people to the edge, you push, but this is vocational. Volunteer party is very different from a very high-paid group of people. And you can push very high-paid people very hard. It's much harder to push volunteers that hard, and I think sometimes something was lost in that translation.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. Gosh, Duncan, this is going to make your blood boil. So my daughter, this is David. Good morning to you, David. My daughter is 9. She has cerebral palsy. She was denied occupational therapy because she went to a private school.
How dare they?
I agree. I didn't realise how rife this is. No. This one from Dell, thanks for that, David. This one from Dell. Will migrants that haven't paid into the system be declined now if they need care? Well, it's a very good point, and actually it leads to this. This is another news story. The government is struggling to cut the amount of foreign aid it spends on hotel bills for asylum seekers in the UK. These are new figures which have been released very, very quietly by the Labour government. Apparently, the Home Office plans to spend £2.2 billion of our overseas development aid this financial year, basically to cover the accommodation costs of thousands of asylum seekers who've come to this country with absolutely no end in sight on what they're going to do with them. The money is basically going to be used to cover those accommodation costs. Now, the Home Office says, oh, we are committed to ending asylum hotels. We are speeding up asylum decisions. Well, I don't see much evidence of that, by the way. They say they've reduced overall asylum support costs by £500 million. In fact, I think they've saved 200 million quid, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things. And of course, what they're doing is they're robbing from Peter to pay Paul, aren't they?
Yeah. Nothing is going to change until you have a realistic deterrent in place.
100%.
It really is this simple. All of this smashing the gangs guff I keep hearing is just for the birds. The answer is very simple. You have to make, and there's no nice and easy way of doing this. You have to make it very clear to people who are prepared, admittedly, to risk their lives. I don't believe predominantly because they're fleeing war-torn countries. I think the majority of these people, if not all of them, are economic migrants. So let's just put that issue to bed. That they want to come here for a better life, and they want to come here because there's a system that will support them. If you want to deter these boat crossings, which are an illegal entry into this country, you need to have a deterrent. Correct. It is that simple. And the Tories had one with the Rwanda policy, which never really got off the ground because it wasn't given the time to actually be effective.
We did start to see the numbers go down because, of course, they were deeply worried about the fact they might be stuck on a plane.
Yeah, but I'm talking about a massive amount of
numbers. No, indeed, but the planes never took off because they were never allowed to take off, so we don't know.
Because legally there was challenges along the way, and the first thing that Starmer did, one of the first things that Starmer did was to scrap the Rwanda policy, but he did not have a decent alternative in place.
That is correct.
And until you have a deterrent, the boat crossings will continue, particularly on nice days when the sun is shining, and you're going to see the asylum hotel bill continue to rocket.
Well, on that note, France is demanding more money from the United Kingdom to tackle small boat crossings as police are starting to intercept migrants. Now, this comes on the back of this other story. Do you remember? So apparently the French have now decided, because they weren't stopping the boats, were they? Because once they were in the water, they said, nah, we cannot stop those boats. They say they will target boats now within 300 metres of the beaches. Well, why weren't you doing that before?
Well, as opposed to just filming them and taking pictures. I only saw that footage of those 4 coppers on the beach, all their smartphones out, taking pictures and filming it.
So they're trying to bring this in ready for the Franco-British summit, which begins on July the 8th. Emmanuel Macron is coming for a state fate visit to London. Now, France is expanding its naval forces with 6 new patrol boats that will not only rescue migrants but will intercept the taxi boats, allegedly. They've got the first of those, a 46-metre-long Roselle, which is capable of carrying 20 paramilitary police officers, known as gendarmes. It's already at sea. Let's just look at the total, 14,812 so far. Meanwhile, of course, we've managed to spend 800 million quid on the French, and the French are saying, zut alors, we want some more d'argent.
I don't think the money will make any difference. There has to be a genuine will by the authorities in France to stop people crossing the channel. I don't think that will exist. And let's be honest, once they cross the channel, they're not France's problem anymore.
Correct.
So I don't think they're doing everything they can. I'm not surprised they want more money. I come back to my original point. The only way to reduce these numbers significantly is having some kind of deterrent in place, and Starmer will not do that.
I mean, it's interesting. The French until now have refused to intervene in the water because they claim maritime law prevents them from taking action that would put lives at risk at sea. Government sources said ministers overseeing migration policy have now been given the green light to do so whilst respecting the law of the sea. Guess what we've paid for it? This is from the £480 million deal, £7 million of the existing funds redirected for more law enforcement officers. But you're right. See, what is this incentive? The incentive is not there because the minute, if you allow people to come to the UK, they're not France's problem again.
I have some sympathy with the idea that if you have a dinghy that's overloaded with people halfway across the channel,
yeah, I do.
To trying to tackle that, lives could be lost. But what we've been seeing on the footage here a few moments ago, you've got the dinghies just coming off the coast.
Correct.
We're talking, what, 4 foot of water? Are you telling me that there's a serious risk to health and life if you had 50 officers dragging that dinghy and the people off that dinghy in what looks like a puddle? I mean, the pictures we're seeing here, clearly that is not the beach.
No,
that is somewhere else. But the pictures we saw earlier literally was the waves lapping at the shore, and that cannot be a risk to life. It sounds like an excuse.
But also, that boat is not seaworthy anyway. So, in fact, they are already putting their lives in danger. So I would argue the French actually have to up their game. Right, keep those messages coming in, please. Now, this is from Dell. Can't believe what I'm hearing about digital ID cards. It will not stop migrants, as those countries don't have digital ID cards. They'll have passports, but they will throw them away, then lie about where they came from, and it's up to our government to prove where they're from. And this takes months or even years, and then the ECHR laws kick in. It will make no difference other than affecting our rights. And there are safe routes. If there are more safe routes, then you get rejected, then you will go on the dinghy route. It will change nothing. That is the upshot of all of that. How about Dominic Raab as a Reform UK MP, says Paul. Right. David, this is Nan in Wales. Good morning to you, Nan. Good morning, David. The most dangerous politician in the country is Ed Miliband. He will starve us, he will freeze us, and he will end the economy. Starmer is a weak puppet, no brain cell, easily manipulated, and no idea.
I saw someone, I think it was a fellow presenter here at Talk, tweeted a picture of Ed Miliband looking remarkably well suntanned and made the observation, I can't tell you which presenter it was, so it was either Mike or Julia or whatever, but made the observation, it's just like being on a nice holiday somewhere, Ed, on a jet.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just ludicrous.
But remember, there's one law for him and another for the rest of us.
Well, it doesn't work, does it? Because if you want to bring any politician who wants to bring people on side for their pet cause or whatever, you need to bring people on side with rational, reasonable explanations as to why what they want to do is a good thing for the nation. What you have with Mad Ed is you have him just preaching that we should all do this for the good of the planet, and he does the complete opposite.
Absolutely
awful politics.
So many other messages. Natasha says, hi David, my son had to go to A&E a few years ago when still at school. I do remember the consultant talking to him and asking which school he went to, and as it happened it was a private school. Maybe it was just a conversation with a child, but I do remember thinking it was a rather irrelevant question, and luckily it didn't affect his care. But really, staff just don't need to ask or know this kind of information.
It's very intrusive, isn't it?
It is very intrusive.
Yeah.
And also, then you start making assumptions about that person
completely
based on that answer.
Well, we have the assumptions already in place, don't we? Because this story in the Mail on Sunday, numerous examples of children, all right, not an A&E, but are not being given the support and the care they need because they go to an independent school. So the presumption or the assumption is just like, oh well, you got loads of money, why aren't you going private?
Yeah,
it's so wrong, particularly when you talk about kids.
I agree. Totally.
Why should they lose out?
They shouldn't.
At the end of the day, their parents have have paid their national insurance. They've paid their taxes.
I know.
They should have access to the care.
Of
If
course
they need
they
a
should.
walking frame, they should have a walking
But the
frame.
minute you cherry pick and you say there is no universality of care, then you start to undermine the very principles of the NHS, which is what everyone is talking about.
Yeah.
So then you say, well, maybe it's free at the point of need for some people and not others. Well, that then is an entirely different conversation.
Oh yeah, because it gets you into, I mean, if I'm going to be bloody minded about this, it's like you've had 8 pints of cider, you've fallen over on a Saturday night, you rock up at A&E, you need your head stitching. Well, actually, we're not going to stitch it up for you because you've only got yourself to blame. Then you can start getting into the whole area of the rugby player who's broken his nose on a Saturday afternoon because he's been a little bit robust, and just going, well, fella, you've only got yourself to blame, you've got a broken nose, we're not treating you. Once you go down this road, it is really dodgy.
I'm asking this morning, which political leader do you trust the least? The number 0344 499 1000. Good morning, David. This is Peter. I have never trusted a politician less than Starmer. The man is an out-and-out liar and hypocrite. Badenoch won't be able to do what she wants to do. Davey is a plonker, so it's all down to Farage to bring some common sense back. Now, this is from Emily, disappointed of Wiltshire. Reform has lost my support now. I can't help but see Farage as the out-of-control trolley of reform, as Boris was to the Tories. But what a disaster he's made of that. I voted for them in the locals and the general election, but that is it. We'll take a break. After the break, I want to talk about this story from a couple of days ago. It says that Boris can't win back voters who turn to Farage. That's according to a new poll. Don't go anywhere. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:39 already on Sunday, June the 8th. Duncan Barks joins me this morning. Now, this is quite interesting, actually. This was in the Telegraph. Boris Johnson cannot win back traditional Tory voters who turn to Reform UK. It's according to a new poll. Just 15% of Reform supporters believe that former Prime Minister would be a better pick for Downing Street than Nigel Farage. It's a YouGov survey. Johnson is the most popular hypothetical alternative for a Tory leader out of the current or former Conservatives, but he is deemed a worse option than the Reform leader. One of the things we talked about, actually, was charisma. The one thing that Boris has in spades is charisma, and I think people like that. I just remember him on that zip wire, you know, looking like a bag of sugar as he was, you know, suspended halfway. I remember, you know, Whiff Waff is
waving
coming.
his little flag.
Yeah, waving his flag. All of that, brilliant, brilliant. But it appears that and maybe it's the whole COVID thing, it appears that the shine has very much gone from Boris.
It is interesting. I think I shared with you previously, I remember being on the campaign trail when he was trying to be mayor of London for, I think, a second time, and I was in Hackney watching him, and there were people bounding up to him and just saying, I wouldn't vote for you, Boris, but I love you, can I have a picture with you? Yeah. And that stuff, I mean, if you're a politician, I mean, you need to bottle that because it's so rare. He does have charisma, he does have a personality. I was talking to someone recently, actually, at a radio station who was saying that when he used to come in to be interviewed and stuff, he was the same with everyone, whereas there are certain politicians that no name, no pack drill who come into places like this and they don't talk to the production staff, which I think speaks volumes. Right? So he's certainly got charisma and he certainly knows how to deal with people. I think there's a little bit of looking back at the past with rose-tinted spectacles on with Boris, because the political party got rid of him, right? You know, you've got people like Nadine Dorries just going, well, you got rid of this great election winner. And that's the one thing that is right. He wins elections.
He certainly does.
I think the COVID thing damaged him a little bit, but I also think in many ways he is yesterday's news. And I see them... I like him, but I've seen him interviewed in the last couple of months in various places, and it's almost like a little bit of a parody of Boris Johnson. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
It's like an overinflated version of Boris Johnson. I don't mean the fact that he still likes his cheese.
Are you saying he's overcompensating?
There's just a lot of the kind of like the head scratching and the going on, and I just think, I just don't know. I don't know if people want that again. And
it's quite interesting. I think the politicians go in trends.
Yeah,
like everything else, actually. And the whole idea of being this kind of uncoiffured prime minister with hair, as you say, everywhere.
But it was an act.
Yeah,
I mean, I've seen him do it. I don't think I'm giving away any secrets here. I've seen him sit in makeup in a TV studio, having, as we all do, having the stuff to hide the bags. Well, you don't need it, obviously, but I do. The bags under the eyes being removed with copious amounts of powder, and your hair just being kind of smoother. And I've seen him literally sit in a chair in a studio with like 10 seconds to go, and he's done that with his hair, right? So you've got to bear in mind that is a performance, as a lot of politicians do perform, but that look of being slightly dishevelled and the mumbling and the bumbling is an act.
Yes.
All right? And I think it's striking that balance between people wanting conviction politicians who are real-life human beings and those who, dare I suggest it, are faking it a bit.
Just very quickly, Neil says Sadiq Khan is the worst politician in the country. Let's just... I forgot to go through the rest of the front pages. Let's do that. The Sunday Express, here we are. British Army is too small in a dangerous world. Tell us something we don't know. This is Jeremy Hunt. He says Britain needs a bigger army to be able to stand up to the aggression of the Russian tyrant Vladimir Putin. Labour's plan is to get to 76,000 troops after the election in 4 years, which seems woefully short, actually. Hunt is basically saying it's far too small to deter hostile states when Russia is running rampant in Ukraine. In April, the army was just 74,000. I mean, it's woeful.
Can I make a comment on this?
You can.
All right, Jeremy Hunt, former Chancellor, who's got a book to promote.
Yes.
Jeremy, when you were Chancellor,
what did you do?
Why did you not put the defence of this nation first by speaking to whichever Defence Secretary at the time and saying, do you know what? I've got concerns about Army numbers and Navy numbers. Here, chap, have some more money.
Well said. The front page of The Observer just is very strange this morning. Deep trouble. 90% of UK marine reserves are bottom trawled. This is David Attenborough talking to Prince William, saying that actually it's the dredging of the oceans which is the problem. I would agree totally, and of course that's down to the foreign fishing fleets, which we are allowing, thanks to Keir Starmer, back into our territorial waters. 300 species threatened with extinction. China's fleet dumps more fish than we eat in the UK. And Attenborough wins support to save the seabed. That is the front page of The Observer. The Sunday Mirror. It's a miracle my boy has been found. This is Deante James's mum. She's overjoyed to have her son back after he went missing for 6 weeks. This is Vandana Buggerworth. She's calling for better communication between authorities. Turn to pages 4 and 5 for the story. Now, this is her teenage son, went missing for 6 weeks, and thankfully he's been found alive. She says it is a miracle. 17-year-old Deante James had been discovered safe in a hospital. The Mirror had run a campaign called Mist, and obviously she says, I won't forget, it was one of the best days of my life, of course, knowing that he was alive. She said she prayed to God for help 2 days before hearing that he was actually alive. And then when you start reading this, he went missing from Enfield in North London in March. He had been smoking what he thought was cannabis, but it actually was a synthetic cannabinoid spice which causes psychosis.
So she's having a pop at the authorities for not communicating as well as they could do. Right.
What are you saying?
What am I saying?
As a 17-year-old who's out there smoking synthetic cannabinoids.
Well, I think you've got to take some responsibility for your actions, haven't you?
That's why.
Or is that a very old school, unsympathetic view to have?
Old school. Right, front page of The Sun on Sunday. EastEnders star axed over slur on disabled. Honestly, it's the curse of EastEnders, isn't it? Or Strictly, actually. EastEnders star Jamie Borthwick was last night suspended by the BBC for using a slur against disabled people whilst on the set of Strictly. You see, it's the curse of Strictly, this. The actor apologised for any offence and upset. He used a vile term, actually. He was called ignorant and hurtful after using a slur against disabled people. He's been suspended by the BBC after a video emerged of him on the Strictly set using a very awful term, to describe people of Blackpool, the seaside town where the show is being filmed. His career is now hanging in the balance, and a source says it beggars belief he could say something like this.
Now, this is interesting, isn't it? Because this wasn't actually on screen, it wasn't broadcast. So this gets us into the whole area that there is some banter. I'm not defending this, but hear me out. There's some conversations, some might say banter going on when the cameras are not operating, that's been filmed by other people, and then it gets leaked or sent to the media saying, well, look at what this person did. The lesson here is you need to conduct yourself with the utmost propriety.
At all times.
In any situation.
I mean, it's interesting, he was with Wyn Evans. I'm saying nothing. And the Daily Star, this is, it's very worrying for me, this front page. Daily Star, the shape of meow, right?
What?
A wild beast has been spotted near the singer Ed Sheeran's country pile. The reason it's important to me is because I live very near him. Big cat experts have warned singer Ed Sheeran to watch out. A huge panther-like creature was spotted prowling near his country mansion. It's enough to give you the shivers. Turn to page 7. Right, but where...
Mendlesham.
Well, this is what I was going to go, right?
Yeah.
So, a panther creature has been spotted next to the country pile where the Thinking Out Loud singer lives with his wife and daughters. So, someone took phone photos of the beast from Eye in Suffolk, which is nowhere near his house.
Oh, right,
So this story doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
But anyway, apparently they found a large black animal walking up and down along a tree line at the edge of the field. So, and then they talk about Mendlesham. Well, Mendlesham and I, and where he lives, are nowhere near each other.
Yeah, I know, but why let the facts get in the way of a good story?
Right.
I mean, I'm a big fan of the Daily Star because some of the stories they write are great.
I always say it's my favourite front page.
Exactly, and I love the bit at the end of this story, which is we approached Ed for a comment, and this is like, because he's got nothing else to worry about. There may be a big black cat, or possibly not, somewhere near your home, or possibly not. What do you think,
Which is
Ed?
actually nowhere near your home.
Exactly.
And actually, when I go back to Suffolk later today, I should be watching out for said panther.
Well, I think you should be careful.
I should be careful. So I will retreat to the safety of a pub.
Yes. Is your local one opened yet?
Oh, no, that's a big story. No, it hasn't.
Do we need to go down and show some muscle?
We do need to show some muscle.
Dodgy,
So a sign has appeared outside, which is the size of a teapot, saying we're open, no alcoholic drinks served at all. The chain is still across the front of the pub, so it doesn't exactly look very welcoming. And there is a sign saying private property. Now, I would suggest that doesn't mean it's open.
It doesn't pass.
I think I'm going to take
test.
you on a tour of that particular pub.
Well, if it's not open, I don't want to go.
No, we'll go to some other ones, and some really nice ones.
We could sit on the wall outside with a couple of bottles.
Yeah, we could. Well, that's so weirdly, that's what the village is talking about doing. Everyone coming together and bringing your own alcohol and sitting in the car
That's what
park.
I would do.
Yeah, well,
Make the point.
I'll get you down for that then, Duncan.
I've never been to Suffolk.
Well, we miss you.
God bless you.
Right, let's take a break now. Lots more still to come after the break. In fact, we're going to be talking about a new blood test for Alzheimer's disease. It's highly accurate, according to the researchers. It's really interesting. Thoran Govind, who's a pharmacist and health expert, will be joining me after this break. Don't go anywhere. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
I think he's shattered physically, he's exhausted, And I think that this was actually not about the burqa ban question. That is not why Zia Yusuf has left the party for the time being, or left his role in the party. I think that was a catalyst, because I think he took a whole load of grief on social media and on any number of other channels over. I think he was a little blindsided by it. That was a communications failure. And I think it's been really, really rough for him.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 7:52 on Sunday, June the 8th, in a very packed show. Right, let me tell you about this. Researchers say a new blood test for Alzheimer's has been shown to be highly accurate in detecting people with early symptoms. I think this is absolutely fascinating. They look for two proteins. These are beta amyloid and also p-tau. And those are two proteins that you see in Alzheimer's disease. They found the test was 95% accurate in identifying patients with existing cognitive impairment linked to the condition. It's a study of 509 patients in an outpatient memory clinic in Florida. It was published in the Medical Journal of Alzheimer's and Dementia. It was also 82% accurate for specificity, and that means it can rule out people who don't have dementia. Well, I'm absolutely delighted that pharmacist and health expert Thorin Govind joins me now. Thorin, always good to talk to you. Good morning.
Lovely to talk to you, and I think this is really, an exciting prospect given the rates of diagnosis when it comes to Alzheimer's. So 1 in 3 people in their lifetime are likely to develop dementia, and there's so many people, about 944,000 people living with dementia in the UK. So this is a growing issue that we really do need to tackle, and it can be heartbreaking, as we know, David, when people are having to support family members who are going through this. It's horrible to see someone go through this and effectively, not be the same person that they used to be. And it is a progressive disease as well.
Absolutely right. And of course, these two proteins, which we know are present, so you've got beta amyloid and the tau proteins as well, it comes together, it forms sticky plaques, which we believe to be toxic to those brain cells. So essentially what we're saying is, if you can do this very simple test and you can show the presence of those two proteins, then we can intervene earlier and hopefully stop the progression of that disease. And of course, Alzheimer's is such a horrible disease, and it robs people pretty much of everything.
Yes, and the problem with this as well is we don't know the exact cause of Alzheimer's. It's all still being looked into, but it is neurodegenerative. Can't get that out on a Sunday morning.
No, quite.
And it's that decline in cognitive function. But again, what's exciting about this test is that it's been approved in the US. How we will see that then over here in the UK will be interesting, and obviously we will have to see how that's used in practice. But right now, when it comes to getting this diagnosed, it is a longer process. People are they go to their GP. We're trying to figure out what the memory problems, some of the confusions are. They might not have many symptoms, and how this is being rolled out, this test at the moment, to find out so that people who don't have the cognitive symptoms as well. That's the next step for this test.
Absolutely. And of course, the worry is, and that as you get older and you become more forgetful, and that is just basically a vestige of being older, and I put myself in that category as well, where I can't remember why I'm in a certain room that I went into. And then you think, well, is this actually dementia, or is this a type of dementia? Is it Alzheimer's? So what they're saying is a very simple blood test could detect Alzheimer's up to 10 to 15 years before you show any other symptomatology. And the problem for clinicians at the moment is it's normally diagnosed once you have started exhibiting those symptoms, isn't it?
Yes, and it is that process. It's, you know, it's that seeing the symptoms, then it's the referring to a specialist, then it's the MRI, the CT scans, the blood tests. It's, you know, a long road for people when it comes to this. So if we can support people earlier and have much more, you know, armour available to this, I would say this test is a little more invasive than what people might be used to as well. So we have to balance that as well. But in terms of if we think how going forward in terms of the health and social care system in this country and how much we are struggling, if we can put things in place at an earlier stage when people are perhaps, you know, have more cognition and are able to think about how they would like their condition to progress and to think about what they can do to support their condition, that's very important.
And of course, we're starting to see new drugs come online, aren't we? I mean, certainly in other areas of medicine, the rollout of monoclonal antibodies has been extraordinary, and we're starting to see that in Alzheimer's as well.
Yeah, a huge amount of money, of course, and time is spent on drug development, and then to get, you know, it does take a number of years. So it's important as well that we have the blood tests and the backup to support us in rolling out new medications as well. And as you know, it's not easy even when the drug has been developed, because it still has to go through NICE clearance in this country. So NICE are the body who consider how much it costs versus how many people we can look after and whether it will end up as well on the NHS is another ongoing process and issue.
Yeah. Thorin, thanks so much. Really good to talk to you this morning. Sorry, time is tight. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, Duncan? The risk of Alzheimer's, as we know, increases with age. It affects 1 in 14 people over the age of 65. I think it's just the most hideous condition. It robs you of everything. And I saw my grandmother go through it.
I've got some neighbours where I live, not too far away, who one of the couple, she's got Alzheimer's, and it is devastating to witness, actually, over the period of time. It really is. But it is good news, this, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
You should welcome it, and it's good that, you know, medical research leads us to hopefully identifying it a lot earlier.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. I was doing a medical show, actually, in the week, and I was talking to experts from around the world about where we are in terms of medicine. It feels like we're at a really pivotal moment with immunology, and as I mentioned, the monoclonal antibodies all coming online. We're starting to see incredible results in all sorts of different disease modalities, which we never had before.
No, and I mean, it's great because we're now in a position where we can identify potentially if someone is more susceptible to a certain illness or condition, but it then puts the onus on that person maybe to do certain things in their life to actually look after themselves a bit better, so that particular condition doesn't manifest itself to a great level.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of messages coming in. Good morning, David. Great show as usual. Thanks very much. That's Paul in the Cotswolds. If the NHS wants to go down this road, as we were saying, if they want to go down that road, or if you've got money, you can go private, that's fine. But then they need to give the money back. They've paid into national insurance and some tax they'll take, but they never give back. I haven't used the NHS in years, but they don't say to me, oh, here you are, have some money back.
I think that's true. I mean, private medical insurance, if you take it out, there's an argument to say you should get tax breaks because you're reducing the benefit on the NHS.
I totally agree with that, because, of course, you're taking people away from the state system and you're empowering people as well. Our time is over.
I'm sad.
I'm sadder.
It's been emotional.
Thank you so much for coming in.
See you soon.
Are you going to the pub today?
I might take the dog for a walk.
The dog that just veers into the pub.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, very good.
He's well trained.
Yes, very well trained indeed. Duncan, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, David.
Hopefully I will see you again very soon. Keep all your messages coming in, please. We'll go through more of the front pages. We'll talk about all the latest breaking news as well after this break. This is Weekend Breakfast. A very good morning to you.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay!
8722, start your message with the word talk. Who would you send to space and why?
The person I would love to send to space would be Mr. Keir Starmer. And then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space on a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. If he goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months, we have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Oh, no, I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists, there is just so much to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question, so I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, so you get the job, yeah? Come on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what, there's no.
I think David Lammy would be the person I'd want to send up in space and never come back again.
Yeah, the problem is how much would the bill be for him to munch through whatever food on the way there?
Hey, it worked. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay!
8722, starting message with the word talk. Who would you send to space and why?
The person I would love to send to space would be Mr. Keir Starmer. And then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good morning to you. Just after 8 o'clock on Sunday, June the 8th, I'm David Bull, and this is Weekend Breakfast. Weather looks much nicer, actually, now than it did a few hours ago. Hope it's good wherever you are. Right, great news for a Sunday. It's National Best Friends Day. Life wouldn't be the same without best friends. Of course, they're the friends that you can count on at a moment's notice. They're the ones that love and laugh and support and cherish you in the good times and also, crucially, in the bad times as well. And today is about celebrating those best friends.
Thank you for being a friend. Travel down a road and back again. Your heart is true, you're a pal and a confidant.
Oh, there you go. Also, it's National Name Your Poison Day. It's a fun day to grab a few friends, head out to a bar and get a drink. Sounds marvellous to me. This is a day when you're encouraged to choose something you wouldn't normally order. So go on, have a tipple, and of course I have to say, do drink responsibly, won't you?
A beer for breakfast. A beer for lunch. Beer for supper.
Also, on a more serious note, it's British Heart Week, a vital event dedicated to raising awareness about heart health and the importance of heart care. That's right, it's British Heart Week.
And the good heart these days is hard to find.
Is that Fergal Sharkey? Yeah, I thought it was. Wow, that's a good memory, isn't it? Right, let's move on to this hour's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating fascinating facts.
Right, on this day in 1405, Richard Le Scrope, the Archbishop of York, and Thomas Mowbray, who was the Earl of Norfolk, were executed in York on Henry IV's orders, accused of treason. I love this one. On this day in 1901, it was the opening of Cromer Pier. Now, it's a Grade 2 listed seaside pier on the north coast of the county of Norfolk, above Suffolk. There are records of a pier in Cromer dating back as far as 1391. But although at that point it was the form of a jetty, in 2000 and again in 2015, Cromer Pier was voted Pier of the Year by the National Piers Society. Its pier show is now the only End of the Piers summer variety show in the world. The present pier has been damaged, poor thing, by storms in 1949, 53, 76, 78, 90, 2005 and 2013. And then let's just go to this one. American President Ronald Reagan became the first American head of state to address a joint session of the British Parliament, and that happened in 1982. And those are the fascinating facts.
Weekend breakfast, feel alive and right. With David Ball, everything's just right.
Well, a very good morning to you, just after 8 o'clock on Sunday, June the 8th. I'm David Paul, and this is Weekend Breakfast. If you are just waking up, actually, the papers are all over the place this morning. Let's just look at this one. The Sunday Telegraph, Badenoch, let bosses ban burqas in offices. This is really interesting, actually. Bosses should have the right to ban staff from wearing burqas and other face coverings in the workplace. She hit out at Sharia law. She hit out at first cousin marriage for acting as an insidious barrier to integration. She said she had strong views about face coverings and would not allow people in her constituency to the surgeries if they wore face veils. She also talks about the Sharia courts. We'll talk about this in just a moment, just a moment's time as well. She also says in an interview with the Telegraph, she warned Liberal Conservatives they will be blocked from standing for the party if they disagree with the findings of the Commission over the ECHR. The Sunday Times and actually that Sunday Telegraph as well also talk about what is going on at Reform. Reform chairman returns after 48 hours. We'll talk about that as well. The Mail front page, boy 8 turned away by the NHS. Why? Because he is a private school pupil. Unacceptable behaviour. I really hope heads roll because of that. Let me also just ask you this question this morning. Which political leader do you trust the least? There are a lot to choose from. 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. But joining me now is James Price, former government advisor. A very good morning to you, James.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
No, absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for joining me. What did you make of this, I think, quite bizarre story from Kemi Badenoch? This is the front page of the Sunday Telegraph. She said bosses... She's kind of catching up, isn't she? Because we talked about... Sarah Pochin mentioned the burqa in the House of Commons at PMQs. Keir Starmer didn't even have he didn't even have the courtesy to answer it. And now Kemi Badenoch is saying bosses should have the right to ban staff from wearing burqas and other face coverings in the workplace. She then went further and hit out at Sharia courts, first cousin marriage. She says it's acting as an insidious barrier to integration. She says she has strong views about face coverings, wouldn't allow anyone with a face covering into a constituency surgery. Is she playing this right? I mean, clearly she's decided that this is an issue that the country cares about. She's decided that she will wade in on this. I'm just wondering, is it too late, given that PMQs was on Wednesday?
No, you're right. It's odd in some of the approach to this, and I think you're saying catching up is a good phrase in lots of ways about it. I think that the difficult bit here is that big headline of let bosses ban burqas. Now, I definitely believe in the right of businesses to set dress codes and things like that for their employers. And I agree with Kemi Badenoch that things like the burqa, just like I agree with the great new Reform MP, Sarah Pochin, who asked that question, is a terribly insidious, anti-feminist, anti-British symbol that maybe we can get onto in a second. And I agree with Kemi about getting rid of Sharia courts and all these sorts of things. The problem is this idea of putting it onto business. I used to be a nice cuddly free marketeer as well. But I think things have fallen so far now that we need, actually, and I can't believe I'm even saying this, the state intervention in order to do this. Because if you just leave it up to business owners, they're not going to have the kind of the cultural or social capital to do this themselves. There'll be too much pressure not to do it. And so you need the government to set the tone on this and to ban these sorts of horrendous anti-feminist, anti-women symbols, because otherwise I don't think any one business is going to have the kind of clout to be able to do it on its own without government backing.
And what do you make of Keir Starmer? I thought he was incredibly rude to Sarah Poachin. The fact is he didn't even bother to answer the question. And the fact is, it's called PMQs for a reason. You get asked a question and you're meant to answer it.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think I don't, again, like to normally play these sorts of games, but you start to see the way that Starmer replies to female MPs.
Yes.
Very different to the way he replies to the chaps, isn't it? And that's not just my observation. Lots of female friends of mine say this about him as well. And I know why he wouldn't answer it, because at the moment the Labour Party is a very awkward coalition of very, very, very far left progressives who have been brainwashed into thinking for some reason that it's progressive to make women have to wear these sorts of things. And again, people on the very, very extreme, backward, increasingly Islamist side of things as well. I just want people at home to think about the natural experiment that happened in Afghanistan. So pre the 2001 invasion and everything like that, the burqa was mandatory by the Taliban and every woman had to wear this. By burqa, for the avoidance of doubt, we mean everything covered, including the eyes, with a bit of sort of gauze over the eyes for a woman to see out. In the 20 years that Western forces were there trying to nation build and build that country up, many, many, many women, especially in the cities, thought, oh, this is great. I don't have to wear this awful, ghastly thing anymore. The Taliban came back in, and what's one of the first things they did? They forced women to wear it again. So we've got a natural experiment of what happens when there are lots of chaps with guns going around preventing Taliban and other old men from forcing women to wear these things. And yet we're supposed to believe that women in this country, in Britain, in 2025, are willingly doing this and aren't being pressured or forced into doing it by their husbands or their fathers or anything. The same people who want to tell you that women are choosing to wear this are the same people, by the way, who don't think that a human can have possibly enough willpower to resist eating chocolate bars unless they ban adverts from seeing it all over the place. It's completely ludicrous, and I think they're terrified of being called racist or anti-Islamophobic or any of these sorts of things. When we know, I think, if we look deep into our hearts, that this is a deeply un-British, anti-woman symbol.
Well, it's so interesting that, because Keir Starmer was very keen to talk about an island of strangers, wasn't he? And yet, he can't confront something that the vast majority of people in this country are opposed to.
Yeah, well, I think the guy's completely spineless in almost every respect on this. He was sort of right on the island of strangers point by, I think, his quite clever chief of staff telling him that you need to actually try and keep some voters ready for the next election in some sense you know what's going on. But that island of strangers point is right. We've had Conservative MP Neil O'Brien point out that there's £1 billion every month being spent on benefits for foreigners. So people have come over here and just sit in probably, I don't know, social housing that they're being subsidised by taxpayers as well, and just given free money to sit around here. This is ludicrous. And then you get people that don't speak any English, people with no interest in integrating whatsoever. Do you have any faith that the Labour Party cares about this? No, they're just too scared of being called out and losing yet more of their voters to this.
I mean, it's really fascinating, isn't it? What do you think this does in terms of the silent majority in this country and the rise of reform? Do you think you can equate the two? Because obviously the Sarah Poachin question, and I've said this many times, which was very punchy for a first question. Some people yesterday were saying to me she shouldn't have asked that question. I admire her for asking that question, because look what has happened as a result of it. And actually, I think there are people around the country saying, good on you, at last. Someone's actually saying what we think.
Absolutely right. I mean, it's former Reform MP Rupert Lowe who slightly cheekily tweeted, "I like Sarah Poachin, she's got balls."
Yes.
think that perhaps a more delicate version of that sentiment is one I definitely get behind. You want some MPs who are actually there to do something rather than just be somebody, in the words of the late great Margaret Thatcher. I think you're right to correct the rise of reform to this sort of feeling around the country that you can't say anything anymore, that we're not recognising the country, and even saying a few words like I did just then could land me in hot water with the police. And this ridiculous ruling came out from Prevent. Now, Prevent is, for those that don't know, the kind of Home Office plan to, if you see that someone is being radicalised, that you can report them to Prevent and they can start to say, actually, yeah, this person has been reading all sorts of dodgy stuff on the internet and we need to intervene to stop them turning into a full-blown terrorist. Now, very obviously, this was designed in the wake of 9/11 and 7/7 and Islamist atrocities, and the fact that there are now millions of Muslims in this country and that there are forces trying to convert those people, many of whom will be deeply patriotic and love the country that they're in. Their families, of course, will have come here to get away from kind of barbarian medieval ideas. But younger people getting influenced on their phones, on TikTok and whatever else it is. And so we know this is a big problem. There are about almost 50,000 people on the MI5 watch list right now. And yet Prevent this sort of terror of going, well, actually, it's about balance. And, far right people are just as bad. And it's got to the point now, it came out in the Telegraph this week, that one of the things to look out for, in case somebody is a far right terrorist in the making, that they're worried about say decline, a threat to Western civilization and mass migration. Well, I'm really concerned about the problem of mass migration and what it's doing to our culture, to our society, to our economy. I'm really concerned about the decline in Western values because I'm not a relativist, and hopefully, like you and everybody else listening, I think that Western civilization and British culture in particular is the most fantastic that the world has ever created. And so apparently that makes me on the way towards being some dodgy terrorist suspect. Ludicrous. And that's why people are turning to reform, and they're supporting also, I think, strong right-wingers like Robert Jenrick as well, because they know that time is running out for us to fix these problems. Because if you've got idiots like this running the country, we're in real problems coming up very soon.
I would agree totally, and I mentioned this earlier. There's a great article in The Spectator by Kunwar Kuldain Shahid talking about so many Muslim countries, 10 Muslim countries have banned the burqa, so therefore we should have a conversation about it in this country. Now, also just going back to Kemi Badenoch, she is really struggling to have any cut-through. We saw that in the recent by-election. She's in this article also talking about the ECHR. She's commissioned the review, which is going to be done by Wilson, as to whether or not we leave the ECHR. Reform UK has been very clear that their policy is to leave the ECHR. She then starts dabbling with digital ID cards, saying, well, I'm coming round to the idea that possibly, vaguely, maybe I support digital ID cards. Kemi Badenoch doesn't seem to believe in anything.
I actually think that her ECHR point was one of her strongest points as leader, because it was quite clear that she had actually at least sat down and done the homework to understand all the different, quite insidious ways that British law has now become befuddled by the ECHR. It's not just as simple as saying we're going to leave this one thing. It's been ratified in all kinds of laws. I think Tony Blair's Human Rights Act of 1998, the worst one, this completely nonsense idea that before Tony Blair came in, we didn't have any human rights in this country. Right? And that they don't have them clearly, therefore, in Canada or Australia or New Zealand or Japan or anywhere else, because they don't have the ECHR in their rules. Ludicrous. And so I think it's right that, and smart, actually, that Kemi has done the work to start thinking about this. But, of course, with reform on the rise, she doesn't have as much time as she seems to think that she does. And so I would like to see her coming out and being punchy. If she'd come out and said, right, it's time to leave this, we can all see how ludicrous it is, and my commission full of amazing legal experts is going to work out exactly how, I think that would be a bit punchy.
Or indeed the implications, the ramifications, how you sort of disentwine all of that, which I would agree with you. Let's talk about Reform UK, though, because, of course, Zia Yusuf is returning to Reform UK just 48 hours after resigning as the party's chairman. I think it took a lot of people by surprise last night when that hit around 5 o'clock last night. He says it was the result of exhaustion, working for 11 months without a day off. He is not going to be chairman. He is going to run this Doge unit. He's also going to be involved in policy making, fundraising, media appearances. He is a very consummate professional when it comes to those media appearances. And also Nigel Farage says, well, actually, the job is far too big, which would equate with what Zia Yusuf said as well. They're going to bring in a front-facing chairman who will tour the country and a deputy in charge of organisational matters. Getting Zia back into Reform UK, does that help or hinder the party, do you think?
Well, I wonder if after a morning of violent agreement between you and I, we may differ slightly on this. I just think it's been a shambles. But the one thing that Reform has to do is to stay united on a couple of simple messages about mass migration and about this sense that we're losing the country in some ways. You then have, as you say, a very brave new MP come out and tackle a very controversial issue where, as we said before, women are probably being forced en masse to wear these horrendous things. And then this guy decides, completely unelected, to pop up on Twitter and say, I think that's really dumb. Well, I don't think that the people who are suffering under this think it's dumb. I don't think Reform members and supporters and voters think it's dumb. I don't think Conservatives think it was dumb either. I mean, a lot of us think that what was dumb was this bloke acting with this kind of arrogance against the new female MP. And so, given that some of the other problems that Reform has had with, again, people like Rupert Lowe, they're still going to ride high in the polls because of all the structural issues we mentioned. My concern, though, and I like a lot of what Reform talk about, I think Farage is very good in all sorts of ways, is that you need to have a lot of quality people joining that party and joining in Parliament in the next election. And you see what happened to Rupert Lowe, who is a clearly high-quality individual, and you see what's happening now around Zia and some of the other people in that party in the briefings against him. Why would high-quality, talented people take a punt on Reform right now when they see that it's still a bit of a mess? And that sounds a little bit, inside Westminster and gossipy and the rest of it. Say it may not hurt their poll ratings just yet, but I do think that the biggest challenge is to get high quality people, and you know this yourself, right? As a highly qualified doctor who's done all sorts of things, getting you into politics was a great boon, a great win, and we need a lot more of that happening, and regardless of what party it is. And I worry that these sorts of squabbles are going to just make people stay in their business, stay in what they're doing, rather than come into public service.
I mean, just pushing back, wouldn't you say that this is teething problems? The organisation, as I know only too well, has grown enormously from, polling around 2-3% to polling 31%, 41 full-time staff within that organisation, a huge voluntary party now, and many thanks to all of them who do their work day in and day out. These are teething problems. You've got an organisation, any company that grows at the speed that Reform is growing, and I'm not saying it's a company because it's a political party, but any organisation that grows at that speed is always going to have problems.
Yeah, that is definitely true, although it's a fairly unenforced error to have the chairman of any organisation call someone dumb and say, that's it, I'm flouncing off and taking my toys home. That was...
Well, he's flounced back and he's brought his toys back.
Yeah. Well, the karaoke is not, or the hokey-cokey is maybe not the best move for these sorts of things. I also think there's just, again, teething problems is a good way to put it, perhaps, but there are some other things that would give people like me, for example, that maybe you would want to try and win over, pause for thought. You had Richard Tice being interviewed recently. When he was asked about it was an issue of changing demographics in decades' time, he said, well, that's a long way in the future. I'll be long gone by then. And I put my head in my hands and no. Right? Edmund Burke, the greatest philosopher maybe this country's ever produced, said, no. The social contract is between the living and the dead and those who are yet to be born. We owe it to future generations to pass on wonderful traditions and architecture and art and novels and all these sorts of things, and to try and leave the world in a better place in which we found it. And you've got the deputy leader saying, I don't care, I'll be long dead by then. What's the point of that?
Yeah, and it feeds nicely into two subjects I'm going to talk about later. White British people will be a minority in the UK within 40 years, and white British peoples are now the minority in 1 in 4 schools in England already. So I think you make a very pertinent point. Thank you so much for your time, James. Always really good to talk to you. That's former government advisor James Price. Lots of messages coming in. Mike B in East Sussex, who's the branch chair of the Sussex Weald for Reform UK. Good morning to you. I'm really pleased to see Zia Yusuf coming back into Reform. Great to show the loony left that it wasn't infighting. I don't blame him for being exhausted. We need more Zias. Excuse me. I love James. This is Stephanie. I love James. I agree 100% with everything he said. Excuse me. Have we forgotten about the Muslim child that died and was forced to wear a burqa to cover up the injuries here? Just needed a break. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. I'm asking also this morning, which political leader do you trust the least? There's a lot to choose from. David, good morning. This is Malcolm in Hampshire. Which leader do I trust the least? I've been voting since the early 70s and know that telling the truth is often lacking. Having said that, Starmer is in a category of his own. Malcolm, thank you very much for that. We'll take a break. After the break, it's our Future Politics panel. Joining me this morning, Oliver Dean, who's a political commentator, and Adam Dale, who is also a political commentator. That's all still to come. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
I think that one thing we definitely should be doing is, like many other countries do, just start ignoring the ECHR. There are nearly 10,000 ECHR judgments that have been ignored. France has done it to get rid of terrorists, for example, out of their country. Why aren't we doing the same? Why aren't we saying, I'm sorry, that's crazy if you're using ECHR Article 8 or Article 3 or whatever it is in this case, to keep someone who is running around the streets with a knife in this country. We'll just ignore it and we'll just deport him. That is because he's leaving the ECHR. God knows how long that will take and how complicated it will be.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
27, Sunday, June the 8th. I'm David Bull, and this is Weekend Breakfast. So many messages coming in. Steve in Cumbria. David, Kemi is talking rubbish when she says businesses should ban the burqa. That will simply drive women who wear the burqa into businesses who haven't banned it, thereby creating further division. How many women do you know in burqas in business? Question. Don't know. Deborah in Essex. Good morning, David. I love James. He has so much common sense. The worst Prime Minister is obviously two-tier care. He needs to go. Can you believe women wearing the full burqa and hijab whilst driving a bus? I kid you not. I haven't seen that, actually, but thank you for bringing my attention to it. Dr. David, this is PB. You're wearing a living room curtain shirt. Thank you for that. Very kind. Lots of other messages coming in. Good morning. The British public will vote Boris back. He is a very good politician. Regards, Jacqueline in Bournemouth. Right, let's take a quick call. Anne is on the line from Gwynedd. Good morning.
Good morning. A very interesting show this morning.
Thank you very much.
Regarding your section, first thing, about the Prime Minister not answering questions.
Yes.
Surely the solution for making him answer them would be for the Speaker, who should insist that the Prime Minister give an acceptable answer before moving on to the next question.
I would agree entirely, and I thought that was the role of the Speaker.
Well, and I did.
I mean, what was your feeling? Because Sarah Pochin asked a question. Now, it upset some people. I think many people around the country thought it was a perfectly acceptable question to ask. It was the look that she was given by Keir Starmer, and the fact she was sort of just brushed off as an irritation, a nuisance.
I just don't think he can cope. I mean, he's never run a business. How you can get members of a cabinet who've never run a business, never been on a farm, never been in the country, run the country.
Do you think that shows in their performance?
Yes. Yeah, they're not. They're in a world of their own. And I find it frightening and sad.
And just in terms of your outlook for the country, of course, we have probably 4 years until a general election. How are you feeling about the future direction of the country?
Truly, I just despair. I have grandchildren who work hard in their jobs, which they love, fortunately, and I just despair. Truly despair.
And I'm so sorry to hear that. I think it's a sentiment shared by many people in the country at the moment. Anne in Gwynedd, thank you ever so much for your call this morning. Let's move on. It's time for the Future Politics panel.
The Future Politics panel.
Well, joining me this morning, I'm delighted to say Oliver Dean, political commentator, and Adam Dale, who's also a political commentator. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Let's talk about something completely different for a change. Now, according to this in the Telegraph, white British people will become a minority in the UK population within the next 40 years. This is according to a new report. They've been looking at migration, birth and death rates up to the end of the 21st century. They predict that white British people will decline from their current position, which is 73% of the population, to 57% by 2050, which actually is not very far away. This is research done by Matt Goodwin, friend of this programme. It shows that by the end of the century, the white British share of the population could have fallen to 33.7%, which is a whopping drop. It shows a big rise in the proportion of the UK population comprising foreign-born and second-generation immigrants from below 20% to 33.5% within the next 25 years. And by 2100, 60% in the UK will not have been born in the UK or will have at least one immigrant parent. Also, the Muslim population will go from 7% to more than 11.2% in the next 25 years, and it will be 19.2% by the end of the century. Oliver, should we be concerned?
Well, firstly, David, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I am hesitant to say whether we should be concerned because I don't know fully how Matt Goodwin's come to these conclusions. I don't know, the
But let's say
research
they're accurate.
Well, yeah, but that's a big assumption, and that's obviously going to assume that current trends,
continue. Yes.
Yeah, current trends continue.
Okay, let's say current trends continue, and this is accurate.
But this thing, right? Because we're going into all of these hypotheticals, we're assuming.
Well, this is his research. This is what he shows. I'm asking you, based on this research, if this is right, is this a concern?
But that is a big question as to whether.
But that's why I'm asking the question.
But we don't know whether it's right.
I don't care. The point is, I'm asking you, if this is right, and that's what I want you to answer, if this is right, are you concerned?
No, but the question is whether it is right in the first place. This is assuming a number of different things that are going to continue going in the direction they're going. This is irrelevant as to whether the government's going to change its policy on immigration.
But you're now hypothecating. I want an answer to that question.
But the answer relies on these hypotheses and these assumptions that are being made.
No, it doesn't.
Of course it does.
It doesn't. So let's say that these are right and we get to these.
But that is a massive assumption to say.
I don't care.
But that's important.
If this is right.
But that's a massive assumption to make. You're assuming that these things are just going to continue the way that they're going. You're assuming that this research is correct. We don't know whether it's correct.
Okay, let's say it does happen like this. Are you concerned?
You can't just keep saying.
Okay, I'm not getting any sense out of you at all, Adam.
I'll give you a straightforward answer from my opinion, which is, why should we be that concerned by it?
Oh, don't ask me. I'm asking you. What's wrong with you two this morning?
I don't think that there's necessarily... Again, I agree with the sentiment that I don't see... I think they're quite dubious figures, to be honest. I think they're just sort of headline-grabbing research.
Matt Goodwin is known. I mean, he is known as an academic. He's at Buckingham University. He will have done a lot of research to get to this.
Yeah.
But what we are seeing is that we're seeing the indigenous population, or the white indigenous population, tends to have fewer children. And so, therefore, it stands to reason that you do tend to get immigrant families, second-generation, third-generation immigrant families, who have a higher birth rate, and actually it feeds back into Nigel Farage saying to remove the two-child benefit gap.
But I don't actually think the actual source of where these people come from necessarily is a negative. Because actually, if you look at this from other migration waves across different periods, I mean, Irish, my partner has got Irish descent. They don't actually count. Well, yeah, probably in some shape or form, but they don't actually count in this research as white British. And they pretty much are. I mean, they're exactly the same as me. It's just that they have a slightly different ancestry. So they are assimilated into this society.
Oh, yeah. So why does he say these findings are certain to spark a considerable degree of anxiety, concern and political opposition?
I think it's the kind of classic fear-mongering that we've seen in previous generations, where you get a headline, you go, oh, our type of person is declining, someone else is increasing, it's massively a bad thing. It doesn't take into account that people assimilate into English culture just because their background is from somewhere else.
Well, it feeds rather beautifully, doesn't it, to the front page of the Sunday Telegraph here.
Yeah.
So Kemi Badenoch saying, let bosses ban burkas. We were talking about Sarah Pochin, of course, asking that question. Keir Starmer didn't even bother to reply to it. It's clearly an issue. It was an issue for her constituents as well. It is a lack of integration that I think is underpinning all of this, because, and I know this from living in East London, you've got people living in silos who are not integrating, who are not mixing, who don't share British values. I think that's a problem.
I think there's a bigger point to be made here, and that's that, you know, Kemi Badenoch's come out and said this in an exclusive interview with the Telegraph.
Yes, amongst other things.
Well, amongst other things, yeah. But this was all done because, you know, a Reform MP stood up in the House of Commons and asked the question. And there was this amazing cartoon in the Times a few weeks ago, and it was Nigel Farage playing the Pied Piper, and then everybody else is dancing to his tune. And what we're seeing is Nigel Farage isn't even in power. He's leading a party that has, what, 5 MPs in the House of Commons? And yet the second largest party in the House of Commons is having to dance to that and having to listen to that and respond to that and come out. Pardon?
Having to?
Well, I think, no, absolutely, she is having to. And we're seeing more and more from the Conservative Party, specifically under Kemi's leadership, is this lurch to the right, and they're trying essentially to be a light version of reform, you know. This, I don't want to say, you know, but like, it's almost semi-version of reform. They're going to, you know, not go fully to the way that reform are going, fully to the right, but, you know, they're willing to go partially to that. And we saw with James Cleverly coming out the other day, being in support of net zero, we see this kind of breakaway. And I think there's an argument.
So he's tacking left?
I think, well, I don't want to say he's tacking left. I think he's tacking towards the centre ground. And, you know, we know that elections are won in the centre. You have to have, you know, the most amount of voters are in the centre ground. And James Cleverly's been very tactful in the way he's
That's a really
done
interesting point. Certainly in the past they have been in the centre. I'm not sure that's so true.
Voters or
I think voters are changing because, and it goes back to this story, which is that they are seeing a country which is almost unrecognisable to them, and many people don't like it.
But at the same time, though, you've got, you know, we know for a fact that the Tories have lost considerable amounts of voters to, for example, Lib Dems, to independent candidates in the southwest.
But isn't that because actually it wasn't one party, it was actually 5 parties?
What, you mean the Conservatives? Yeah. Well, yeah, but at the same time, you know, there are great numbers of voters that need to be won back in the centre ground, in the centre-right ground. And the more Kemi continues to move to the right to basically try and mimic reform, the more that she's going to lose those voters.
OK, let's go back to facts here. White British pupils are now the minority in 1 in 4 schools in England. This is according to official data, so this is not just extrapolation. This is census that's been collected from 21,500 primary schools and secondary schools, show that a quarter of them, the majority, is ethnic minority or white non-British. In 72 schools, no white British pupils are recorded, and in 454 they make up less than 2% of the student body. The shift is biggest in cities, as you would expect, like London, Birmingham, Manchester, Bradford and Leicester. In Birmingham, for instance, not one of the 1,084 students were recorded in the census as white British, whilst just 12 of the 2,779 pupils at Loxford School in Redbridge, which is in London, were white British. Is it a problem if you don't have multiculturalism, if you don't have any representation from white kids in these schools, that again is a problem for integration?
I agree with this, the idea that we need to integrate, and there's an issue with that, with returns to immigration. But actually, these are, again, we're cherry-picking figures out of...
Well, we're not. This is fact.
I'm not saying, disputing if it's fact or not. What I'm doing is I'm saying we're equivocating between schools that are very much mixed versus very much not mixed. I mean, what's the answer? Do we segregate schools? I mean, we're not going back to that kind of...
No, I'm not suggesting that, but I will then throw back at you, by the end of the century, 6 in 10 people in the UK will not have been born in the UK or will have at least one immigrant parent. 1 in 5 will be Muslim. Now, I'm just asking, is that a problem, or do we just say, look, this is the changing nature of the world, we have an interconnected
globalised world, right?
Yeah, well, that may be the answer.
I mean, you can't stop population shifts unless you do it by force, and that's a horrible thing to contemplate, even doing anything near to by force. Things naturally change. We can't expect to just be, as we are statically, white British, consistently forever. It's just not a thing. People change, people move to different countries. I mean, if you look at what is white British, realistically.
But it's very interesting that we're seeing the marked demographic change in this country far more than in other European countries.
I mean, look, I'm going to be hesitant to say that I'm concerned, but if there is this argument that, you know, we need more integration, but at the same time there are schools that aren't even having, you know, any white students at all, I think that is a problem in terms of the community, in terms of actually making sure people grow up together, live together, aware of different cultures, and I think that needs to be addressed.
And that's underpinned by Nick Harrison, who's the chief executive of the Sutton Trust social mobility charity, saying the white working class underachievement is a ticking time bomb for equality of opportunity in our country. I think that is right. Well, I'm deeply worried about white working class boys and being sort of put on the scrap heap of life.
And I think that's partly to explain why Reform are doing so well with young white men in particular.
I mean, it's interesting actually, because Reform has supporters from all ethnicities actually.
Yeah. But we've seen through polling, we know that, you know, white people are predominantly more likely to support Reform. We know that from young people, particularly from the 18 to 24 range, the amount of young men who are willing to support Reform is about 3 times as high as the amount of young women.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because I think young men, and particularly young
and they're not
white
working class men. These are
well, yeah, but most of them are working class men. I think a lot of that is to go down to the fact that, you know, there's not really, they don't feel like they have much of a stake in society. If we look at things like the housing crisis, they can't even buy a house. They're putting all of their money on rent, and that's, you know, going down the drain. They can't get a job because the job market's in whatever state it's in.
Yeah.
You know, why would they want to continue supporting this system that hasn't worked for them? Why, you know, Reform are coming around and saying, look, we've got this radical new solution. We've got all of these things that will fix the system for you and make you feel like you're important. And that's appealing to a lot of young men.
And any thoughts on that? I mean, it is interesting. I find it fascinating how many young people are coming to Reform, not necessarily of their own volition. It's not like they've been sort of handcuffed and made
to
I
think people are, let's say, angry, right? They're angry with the situation.
Yeah.
I think you see this classically through history, actually. If there's a bad period, a downturn in the economy, which there has been for quite a while, due to external factors and internal factors, what happens is people shift to a more complain side of politics. They would rather go for something new.
Or I might say more activist.
Potentially. I mean, activist is, you can see it on both sides. We actually had a conversation outside about this, which was, I find I have more in common with someone on the left of a Conservative Party than I do with the left of the Labour Party, from where I stand.
How interesting. So you're a centrist.
I've found out that basically I'm becoming more of a centrist.
That's because you're getting older. Right, gentlemen, thank you for the moment. Hi, David. I'm a PE teacher in a primary school in Plaistow in East London. Out of roughly 850 pupils, only 25 of them are white British. They tell me they are lost and never have their beliefs celebrated. Food for thought. This is Weekend Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk. We're in the middle of the Future Politics panel with Oliver Dean and Adam Dale, and it's been pretty spicy so far this morning. Let's now move and talk about this story, which is in the Sunday Times. It's also in the Sunday Telegraph as well, and this is about Reform and Zia Yusuf. Zia Yusuf is returning to Reform UK just 48 hours after resigning as the party's chairman. He's going to take up a new role. He will no longer be chairman of Reform UK. He said, he's 38 years old, he said his decision to quit was a mistake. It was the result of exhaustion and working for 11 months without a day off. So he is coming back. He is going to do 4 jobs. He won't have an official title, allegedly, although I imagine he will at some point. He's going to run the Doge unit to root out the wasteful spending, particularly in the councils like Kent, for example, where Reform did very well in the local elections. He will also have a stake in policy making, fundraising and media appearances for the party. Now, Nigel Farage said he's realised that actually the weight, the burden that Zia had on his shoulders is far too much, so they're going to split his former role, that chairman role, into a front-facing chairman who will be touring the country, looking after the voluntary party, also the professional party, and a deputy in charge of organisational matters. They're going to bring in someone to run the party's finances, to help Nick Candy, its treasurer, with fundraising. Nigel Farage is going to be in Port Talbot tomorrow, and apparently those 2 appointments will be made by Tuesday. Just in terms of Reform, obviously I've mentioned it is growing and rapidly and everything. How damaging has this been, do you think?
I think this showcases a very clear truth, and that's that Reform is not a serious party, nor could it be considered.
Why do you say that?
Because the fact that, you know, you're chopping and changing leaders, and I know you're going to be quick to point out, well, you know, the Conservatives did the same.
Well, they had 7 chairmen.
No, well, they had
in 3 years.
But look, this is not, they're playing politics. We don't know why he left in the first place, and then suddenly two
well, he
days
said
later,
it's because I was tired.
Well, oh, come on, I think we both know that that's not entirely true. He said he was tired and then comes back 2 days later. It's just constant, it's just a soap drama. It's
why?
Like,
well, give me, why is it? What's the rest of the soap drama?
Well, what do you mean? Like, you know, and now we're coming out, we're seeing, for example, Nigel Farage's spending commitments the other week. He's pledged more than 70 billion in terms of spending commitments, and yet there's no way to pay for it. He said that 27 billion is going to come from DEI cuts when, 7 billion is going to come from DEI cuts when total government...
Well, he's going to abolish net zero.
When total government expenditure on DEI is only 27 million. He said he's going to abolish net zero, which is apparently going to bring in money to the Treasury, but data analysis from the Institute for Government shows that the majority of net zero funding comes from the private sector, not the public sector.
I'm not sure that's true.
That, okay. I mean, we can dispute that, but that is fundamentally true. What's clear is that, you know, he's a leader who relies on sound bites. It's a party that relies on headlines. There's no real policy behind it, and they're just not a serious party of government.
Are they a serious party of government?
I tend to agree with most of what he's actually said. I think it's been very eloquently put. I actually find that Yusuf returning, it smacks a little bit of throwing your toys out the pram and then basically getting what you want by coming back.
Well, did he get what he wanted? I mean, he's come back in a very different role.
I think he's negotiated quite successfully with Farage, and I think this speaks to what the true issue is of Reform Party, which is its centralised power at the top amongst a few people, and it needs to be democratised a bit more.
I'd argue the Labour Party is pretty centralised.
Well, they have their own constituencies that have council votes and...
Well, sure, so does Reform. It has won local elections, it's got 5 members of Parliament. I mean, remember, it is a very young party. It's been a meteoric ascendancy.
These are the sort of things where it becomes a little bit grey.
Aren't they teething problems?
Are they teething problems or are they terminal? That's the question.
You think it's terminal?
I think this
Even
though
the Reform is polling at 31%?
I think this sort of power play will not play well with the British public. These sort of things, these.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, it reflects quite heavily, like Musk and Trump. Do we want another version of that, where people are just fighting at the top and it's disruptive, it's damaging?
Okay. Do you think it will change the poll ratings?
I don't know, but I would say that, again, if this type of drama continues, and, you know, we've got 4 years until a general election, they're going to be plagued with more problems. We already had the problems with Rupert Lowe a few months ago. It seems to be symptomatic of Reform's internal structures and structural problems, and I think it would be incredibly unlikely for them to be able to go 4 years without suffering another one of these setbacks. And I think it's going to get to a point where the British public are just going to turn around and say, you know, this clearly isn't a party that's fit for government. Time and again, they've got these internal problems and power struggles.
Do you think the Conservatives are fit for government?
I think the Conservatives, in their current form, no, because I don't think they've got necessarily the right...
Do you think the Labour Party is fit for government?
No, absolutely not. No. But I think, and I say this as a member of the Conservative Party, I think that, if we actually put forward proper policy initiatives, if we put forward proper solutions instead of just pushing on culture war issues, then we could show the British public that we're ready for government again. But I think reform...
But they're miles away. They're polling... What, in the last by-election, they got 6%?
But again, the solution isn't reform, though, because there seems to be this idea that,
Why did 31% of people want to vote for reform, then?
Oh, hold on. Just because 31% of people, that's, Westminster voting election was like, we saw in the Scottish by-election they came third.
Yes, and this was from nothing.
But this was after Farage went up and said, Scotland needs reform, Scotland are going to turn to reform. That's clearly not indicative.
But they beat the Conservative Party.
Well, the Conservative Party has been lost in Scotland for...
Right, okay, very interesting. I would argue Reform did extremely well.
They did do extremely well in the council elections. What you've got to realise is, though, that this isn't an election footing. This is protest mid government.
Is it?
And you've got to see this as I find it quite interesting looking at it from my perspective, because I think the Conservatives, the question is, are they dead in the water as they currently stand? And the answer is yes, because actually basically all of their oxygen is sucked up by reform. What they need to do, which is what you mentioned earlier about James Cleverly, is the politics is always won in the centre ground, and if the Conservatives keep lurching to the right, they're not going to win the next election.
Just to let you know, Reform was only 1,500 votes behind Labour in that by-election.
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yes.
When Farage came out with those spending commitments the other day, do you think that was a serious economic policy initiative?
Well, I think it's true of any...
It's a yes or no question.
No, I'm asking the questions. You don't ask the questions. I think it was perfectly acceptable so to do, but it needs fleshing out as the party prepares for an election. You can tell I'm a politician. Right, so let's take a break. We'll continue this conversation after the break. This is Weekend Breakfast.
Keir Starmer himself in the last week has talked about this country being an island of strangers. There's no better way to start to change that than to get rid of such items like a burqa, which is so distinctive and so divisive and actually quite a threatening thing for British people to pass on the street. I was a magistrate for 20 years, Kevin. If anybody had walked into my courts wearing such an item, proceedings would have been stopped until the item was removed.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. We're in the middle of the Future Politics panel. I'm joined by Oliver Dean and Adam Dale, both of them giving me grief about everything that I say on anything. Chris in Chester, good morning to you. Chris says, Dr. David, this panel, the ones that are on now, are they conservative because they appear to be too liberals? Thank you for that, Chris. Keep all those messages coming in, please. Now, this is another one. Paul Jones says, is Oliver actually a political commentator or an MP? Just answer the question. See? You're being told off. Right, let's talk about this because it's a really shocking story, actually. An outraged mother has accused the NHS of shocking discrimination after her 8-year-old son was denied vital treatment because he goes to a private school. This mother of an 8-year-old blamed Labour's war on private schools for emboldening NHS managers to deny her child help with a crippling joint condition. So this is the story. So essentially her son was referred to a paediatrician at Kingston Hospital in southwest London. She noticed he was struggling to hold the pen properly. He had some mobility issues, so he was referred to that clinician, to a paediatrician. Now, when he went to the hospital, they made him fill in a form and said, which school do you go to? So she thought, well, that's a bit weird. But anyway, filled it in, and then she got a text message saying the child had been declined a crucial appointment with occupational health therapists, which is really important for his hypermobility issues. She then went to see the GP and said, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Well, they found out the specialist unit had written a letter to the GP saying, we are unable to see the child as we do not provide a service to school-aged children who attend an independent school. We are only commissioned to provide a service to mainstream schools. That is despite the boy's brother already being treated for hypermobility issues, the same condition, being treated at the same hospital. Thoughts?
I think me and you are actually going to be in agreement on this, and I think this is symptomatic of Labour's war on private schools and this idea that, you know, somehow we're divided more by class than other things. I think it's disgusting, quite frankly, that anybody is going to be denied treatment purely because of the school that they attend. And, you know, I share all the sympathies with the mother and my support goes out to her.
I agree with you, actually.
I think it's a bit of a reach to blame the government for this. I really do. I mean, obviously there are issues with this story particularly, and I don't agree with what's happened. I think everyone has the equal opportunity, should have the equal opportunity to use the NHS.
I don't think we're necessarily saying it is the government. They have said it is.
Finger pointing.
She says it's
but
the government.
That's an emotive thing that she's basically blaming the government for her issues.
Right?
No, it's not right. It's not right at all, and we can all be in agreement on that. Some things are classically not right, and everyone can agree on them.
Is the VAT raid on private schools right?
Yes.
Why?
Why should everything else? I mean, why should one sector be untaxed?
University fees don't have VAT.
I don't think there should be university fees in the first place, but that's a completely different argument. We're kind of skirting round the point, and we're basically wanting to talk about private schools rather than the actual issue here, which is that this person has been badly treated by someone in the NHS. Now that's a flaw, and that's something that needs to be looked at, but for her to point the finger at the Labour government and somehow say that this is a class war is a bit of a reach.
But the issue is the private schools, because these ideas wouldn't have come about, this culture of, you know, oh well, you go to a private school, you don't go to private school. This wouldn't have come about had Labour not proposed the VAT on private schools and gone forward with it. They've allowed this, they've emboldened them, they've allowed this to happen. And I think they need to take some responsibility.
Well, the government does have to raise money in some shape or form, and if they're going to raise it via...
Because they might not even raise money from it.
But it's an ideological... Exactly right, actually. It loses money, but it's an ideological battle, isn't it? And the point is that everyone pays taxes, everyone pays for the NHS. Equality of access underpins the NHS.
This goes down to the argument of, do you agree with private schools or not?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
I do think it does.
Because if I go on holiday to Magaluf, am I entitled to universality of treatment in the NHS? Yes. So if I choose to spend my money elsewhere, I still get free care. But just because I send my kid to private school...
I don't disagree. I'm not arguing with that point of the case. My point is, that person has been badly treated and should have been treated by the NHS. They shouldn't have been refused. I'm not disputing that.
But in 15 seconds, isn't this sort of symptomatic of something much bigger that's going on?
Absolutely. I think Labour knew that going into the election. They've played on this class warfare politics, and it's come to fruition in this case here.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Oliver Dean and Adam Dale, that was today's Future Politics panel. Keep all your messages coming in, please. 10 years ago, a school in a rural area was downgraded by Ofsted for not being diverse enough, as it was all white. Do you think these non-white schools will be downgraded? Keep these messages coming in. Cliff in Berkshire, good morning. One of our regulars. If I wanted to go into work tomorrow, could I wear a balaclava all day without anyone objecting? Keep those messages coming in, please. Lots more still to come. This is Weekend Breakfast. A very good morning to you.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay!
8722, start your message with the word talk. Who would you send to space and why?
The person I would love to send to space would be Mr. Keir Starmer. And then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space in a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Oh, no, I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists, there is just so many to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question, so I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, do you get the job, yeah? Go on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what... There's no.
I think David Lammy would be the person I'd want to send up in space and never come back again.
Yeah, the problem is how much would the bill be for him to munch through whatever food on the way there?
Hey, it worked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning to you, just after 9 o'clock on Sunday, June the 8th. This is Tickle Me. David, if these two are the future of politics, God help us all. Good morning, just after 9 o'clock on Sunday, June the 8th. 3 hours in, 1 hour to go. Weather looks like it's brightening up. Hope you're very well wherever you are waking up this morning. Great news, though. It's Sunday, of course. It's National Best Friends Day. Life wouldn't be the same without best friends. Of course, these are the friends that you can count on in a moment's notice. These are the ones that love and laugh and support and cherish you in both the good and the bad times as well. And today is all about celebrating your best friend's day.
You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me.
Also, it's National Name Your Poison Day. It's a fun day to grab a few friends and actually head to the pub to get a drink. This is a day where you're encouraged to choose something you wouldn't normally order. Go on, have a tipple. And, of course, I have to add here, do drink responsibly. It is National Name Your Poison Day.
Don't matter what it is, I'm gonna drink it down, down, down. The wine, the beer, the whiskey.
And also, on a much more serious note, it's British Heart Week. It's a vital event dedicated to raising awareness about heart health and the importance of heart care. Very good, Dave, very good. Right, let's move on to this hour's Fascinating Facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
So on this day in 1724, it was the birth of John Smeaton, considered the founder of the English civil engineering. He built the Eddystone Lighthouse at the same time of developing cement that could be used underwater. He had an extensive series of commissions, including canals and also harbours, one particular harbour in Aberdeenshire. On this day in 1963, Dr. Stephen Ward, a London osteopath and friend of call girl Christine Keeler, was arrested and charged with living on immoral earnings. And on this day in 1982, up to 50 British servicemen were killed in an Argentinian air attack on 2 supply ships in the Falklands. Sir Galahad and Sir Tristram were anchored at Bluff Cove when they were hit by missiles in a surprise raid by 5 Argentine Skyhawks. And those are this hour's Fascinating Facts.
Weekend mornings we're taking flight. With David Bull, everything feels right. So grab your dreams and let's have some fun. Weekend breakfast, shining like the sun.
Good morning. Excuse me, 5 minutes past 9 on Sunday, June the 8th. So much we've covered already in the programme. If you are just waking up, this is really interesting, actually. Kemi Badenoch, front page of the Sunday Telegraph this morning. Badenoch, let bosses ban burkas in offices. Kemi, where have you been? This question was asked on Wednesday by Sarah Poachon in PMQs. Anyway, she says bosses should have the right to ban staff from wearing burkas and other face coverings in the workplace. She hit out at Sharia courts and first cousin marriages. She said they're an insidious barrier to integration in this country. She says she has very strong views about facial coverings, and also she wouldn't allow people who are covering their face to come to a constituency surgery, and I think that is absolutely right. So that's that. She then talked later on in this article about the ECHR, saying that actually she thinks we will now likely need to leave the ECHR. She's commissioned this review by Wolfson, but obviously she's not quite sure in her own mind whether she does want to leave the ECHR. She now talks about imposing digital ID cards. I'm not sure that is a vote winner, but anyway, I'm not really quite sure what Kemi Badenoch believes in. Also, Reform UK on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph. Yusuf returns to Reform 2 days after exit. That is the story also here on the Sunday Times. Reform chairman returns after 48 hours. Zia Yusuf has returned to Reform UK 48 hours after resigning as chairman. He says, look, I was exhausted. I had so much racist abuse which had been hurled at me on social media. He is coming back. He is not going to remain the chairman of Reform UK. He's taking over 4 roles, actually, including Doge to cut the wasteful spending, fundraising, helping on policy, also media appearances as well. Also, it looks like the role that Yusuf was doing is going to be split into 2. There'll be a sort of front-facing chairman who will tour the country and a deputy who will have organisational responsibility. Also, front page of the Sunday Times as well, the White House has said to Number 10, do not allow the Chinese embassy to be built between the Tower of London and, or near the Tower of London, between the city and Canary Wharf, because it is national infrastructure and they're deeply concerned about the security implications for the United Kingdom and, therefore, by proxy to the United States as well. Of course, it was blocked by the previous Conservative government. David Lammy has been lobbied, and of course I think the decision goes to Angela Rayner to decide what to do. But I would imagine that if the United States is telling you this is a massive security threat, and if your intelligence services are also telling you that, it's probably a really bad idea. Lots more in the papers as well, and we're talking about this boy 8 turned away by the NHS because he is a private school pupil. Absolutely unacceptable behaviour. One of you, Sue, good morning to you. The Labour Party has stoked a class war. It has also fired a race war. These oncoming conflicts will have dire outcomes in the near future. Rowena, good morning to you. Are your panel in training to be the next Prime Minister? Just answer the question. God help us if they're a taste of future governments. Steve in Cambridge also says, if these two are our political future, my God, we're in trouble. So obviously the shared sentiment from around the world, and that's why I was quite strong, saying, I'm asking the questions, answer the blinking question. Talking of answering the question, joining me now is Rafe Haydel Manku, who's a historian and commentator. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Great pleasure to be with you.
No, lovely. Thanks ever so much for joining me. Now, we're going to move into this section, which I rather enjoy. This is the Week in Politics section. So this is where I ask you, in your humble opinion, who has had a good week, who's had a bad week, who should we look at for the week ahead, and quite frankly, who should have a week off? So let's start. In your opinion, who do you think has had a good week?
I think, once again, Robert Jenrick's had another great week. Jenrick obviously is on a months-long campaign rally to replace Kemi Badenoch. I think the least subtle campaign run in recent years, given that the incumbent has made no mention about wanting to leave the office. He has, of course, recently done a great job on exposing the degree to which we have antisocial behaviour on the underground, with fare dodgers essentially acting with impunity. But, of course, this has led to him replacing Kemi Badenoch on the front pages of various newspapers, just at the time that Kemi Badenoch was trying to relaunch herself as essentially being a more dynamic person. Of course, you're seeing in the story you just mentioned there, the attempt to try to park the Tory tanks on Reform's lawn. Well, Jenrick's trying to do that all on his own with his one-man campaign. And it's clearly working, because you even have people like Sadiq Khan clearly having his feathers ruffled, making reference to Jenrick going on Ozempic, the weight loss drug.
I mean, that's a bit below the belt, quite literally. But just in terms of that, I mean, Jenrick, I think, is speaking for a lot of people, particularly over the fare dodging, and I quite admired what he did. And, of course, the response from London Underground was, well, you haven't got the permit to film, which I think is rather pathetic.
Well, it's so telling, isn't it, that when he actually exposes something which is such an annoyance, or more than an annoyance to many Londoners, because, of course, we're all deeply, rooted in an idea about fairness and justice, and to see people having to pay their huge amounts that they pay for transport whilst others just waltz in and out. And yet the establishment media, the legacy media, and of course politicians, they're more concerned with the fact that this chap was filming fare dodgers in the first place. That really shows you where their priorities are, and why, of course, we see antisocial behaviour going unchecked, and not just, of course, in fare dodging. You can expand this to shoplifting and so many other areas where our daily lives are made hellish because of antisocial behaviour and the seeming incapability of anyone to tackle it.
Do you get the sense that Robert Jenrick knows his own mind? I've spent a lot of time this morning saying I'm really not sure what Kemi Badenoch believes in. She's written this piece, or the piece has appeared in the Sunday Telegraph, saying, let bosses ban burkas in offices. This is based on that question asked by Sarah Pochin. But she then talks about Sharia law, which I think is important, and I do think we need to talk about it. She talks about the ECHR. She talks about digital ID cards. I get the sense, I don't really know what she stands for. Jenrick, are you getting the sense that he is now much clearer in his own mind, because he's also oscillated between his belief structures?
In terms of Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer, I think it's quite interesting, isn't it, how all of these much more draconian policies have come about just after they faced an existential crisis following the local elections to reform. You can't say that about Jenrick. I'm always very doubtful about late conversions, and so I'm certainly not on Kemi's team on that front. But Jenrick, I think, has had a genuine Damascene conversion. He used to be a rather dull politician. I sat next to him at a dinner when he was housing minister. He certainly wasn't talking red meat in those days. But of course, when he was immigration minister, he came up face to face with the blob and the obstacles to the immigration crisis that we face. He resigned over that issue, and I think that since then he genuinely has had the shades lifted from his eyes, and he can see the world as you and I and most of your viewers can see it. So I do think actually, and he plays an important role because he also keeps reform's feet to the fire. And my great hope is that he would at one point replace Kemi Badenoch, so you will have a real arms race between Nigel Farage and Jenrick to try to outflank each other so that we can properly get some real conservative or right-wing policies to the front of the nation.
Yeah, but she's not going anywhere, is she?
Well, she won't. She definitely won't be leading the party into the next general election. I think that's guaranteed. The question is whether. The question is, yes, absolutely. I think the question is more as to whether people will be getting signed Christmas cards for her this year.
I mean, the problem is that if they try and replace the leader again, it's starting. I mean, it's already a farce, but it's now then, you know, the farce has returned to the West End.
It's the fastest return to the West End, but it's also the most rapidly sinking party we've seen.
Well, that's right.
The Tory party is notorious for defenestrating leaders when they can't win. The reason it's the world's oldest and most successful political party is, quite frankly, because it's both pragmatic and ruthless.
But, I mean, let's look at the Hamilton, Larkill and Stonehouse by-election. I mean, that result for the Tories is absolutely disastrous. If you've got Labour on 8,500 and the Conservatives at 1,600, Reform 7,000, I mean, Kemi Badenoch should be very worried by that.
Yeah, well, you remember it's the Krypton factor. Remember, this is the Kemi factor in play here. That's, I think, why you're going to see this. You know, the Tory party is at risk of becoming a non-entity. You know, and I think it will be ripe at some point, if things go the way that they're going, to have a hostile takeover by the Reform Party, as happened in Canada. The Reform Party of Canada had a hostile takeover of the Progressive Conservative Party. That's an oxymoron of a name, of Canada, and. That there's every chance, you see, that if they don't play their cards right, that could happen to the Tory party. But of course, remember, there's no point in Jenrick leading a party of MPs who are all Lib Dem wets in all but name, you see. So you may have a good leader in Robert Jenrick, but unless they get charge of their Tory party MPs, who are actually so far removed from the Tory party members, they're still going to face oblivion, I think.
And who do you think has had a bad week?
A bad week, I think, undeniably goes to Greta Thunberg, everyone's favourite, exceedingly irritating Peter Pan activist, the girl who refuses to grow up. Still having her adolescent tantrums. She's now decided that she has to abandon environmentalism. Apparently the world isn't ending next Thursday, so she's got plenty of time now to actually deal with other issues. So she's taken it upon herself to try and end the war between Hamas and Israel. She's got on board a flotilla of ships or a boat with a bunch of other merry morons. It's called It's called the Freedom Flotilla Coalition. I think it should be called Showboat. I think that should be a remaking of Showboat. And she's doing that to break Israel's siege, she says. And I just think she's in for a very rude awakening coming in the next couple of days when she arrives. Because if she thinks, and her motley crew, that they're going to be dealing with a police force like they're used to dealing with in Western Europe, like the Metropolitan Police will hand out a blanket and a cup of tea and say, "Can I get you anything?" It's a very different thing when you go up against the Israeli Defense Force.
I mean, I think she's looking absolutely stupid.
Well, you know, this just goes to show you the sad state of affairs we're in the world now, where somebody with no knowledge, no experience, no expertise in this area at all, just like she has no expertise on climate, can just jump into something so geopolitically contentious and controversial and sensitive, and of course the world once again listens to a silly bunch of children.
Yeah. Okay, so who should we keep an eye on this week then, do you think?
Well, I think the whole world is going to be keeping two eyes, one eye on Elon Musk and one on Donald Trump. And you remember, you know, you and I and people older than us will remember in the 1980s, you know, the world was gripped by two great soap operas about the rich and powerful. One was Dallas and one Dynasty or Dynasty, depending on what side of the Atlantic you were on. But not even in those, you know, those outlandish shows could anyone have dreamt up a story as outrageous as the world's most powerful man going hammer and tongs with the world's richest man in this sort of battle royale, and you know, an explosion bigger than one of Elon Musk's test rockets. You know, in February we had Musk saying that he loved the president as much as a straight man could love another man. And then fast forward to Thursday of this week, and we saw, you know, what happens when a lover feels jilted or betrayed. And you can see, of course, you know, I think Trump didn't want this fight at all. I think we can see how relatively restrained he's been in subsequent days. But on that Thursday, my gosh, talk about a lover's tiff. Two great egos, two people who are very hot-tempered, two people with their own social media platforms. I mean, you couldn't make it up. And, Musk making unfounded allegations about Trump's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, saying he's going to cancel all of Musk's billions of dollars of contracts, Musk saying he's going to stop sending stuff into space. I mean, you couldn't get a bigger stage upon which to play this out. I think things have calmed down for a bit, but I certainly think this is the thing to watch for the next week or two. It's that you can never tell how it's going to turn out.
I mean, it is extraordinary, isn't it? It's like two kids in a classroom, and one says, right, I'm taking my toys away, right, you can't use mine. I mean, it is, for these two grown men, as you say, the richest and the most powerful man on the planet, to come to this, and I think we all thought it would end badly at some point. I just think it was the brevity of that bromance that I think took many of us by surprise.
Yeah, I mean, and in a sense, we're going to have to see how it plays out, because there are a lot of things, a lot of ways in which they could both still get at each other. We've got Elon Musk threatening to actually support Trump's opponents in Congress, those who are opposed to his big, beautiful bill, which Musk thinks will undo all the work he did with Doge. But you could see, Trump looking into his immigration status, as his advisor Steve Bannon wants him to do. Musk could tell tales on Trump. I mean, he must have a lot of knowledge of Trump after the last few months and so forth. And there are all sorts of business ways in which Trump can hurt him. I mean, this is big man stuff. But yes, to have two people with such sensitive egos and such hot tempers, you wonder how they managed to get into the positions they're in when they seemingly are so incapable of moderating their conversation.
Well, I think powerful people are attracted to each other because they like power.
Absolutely, but also they're very quick to anger. But what's interesting is Trump wouldn't have taken this from any other person. Anyone else who had done this, he would have come down like a ton of bricks. So either Musk has some compromat on him, or Trump is genuinely like the chap and is genuinely distraught at Musk's. I suppose there's only one man who can sound crazier than Donald Trump when it comes to social media.
And I mean, it was interesting, wasn't it, that Trump basically said, if you go against me and you embolden my opponents on my big, beautiful bill, then I'm going to take away some more of your toys and more of your contracts.
Yeah, exactly. And there are calls from some in Congress now to investigate Musk's alleged drug use, which the New York Times and others have reported on. So it's a crazy story. Dallas and Dynasty combined. Watch this space.
Well, quite. Who killed JR? Right, and then finally, who should have a week off?
A week off. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, the rest of this Parliament off should go to Lord Hermer, our odious Attorney General. Just another terrible week for this anti-British hater, I would say, after he was forced to apologise for comparing those of us who want to leave the European Court and Convention on Human Rights to Nazi-era Germany. And then that was followed by reports, of course, that he had declined to review the lenient sentences that were given to a rapist and a paedophile and a terrorist fundraiser, despite the fact, of course, that he was the man who approved and signed off the prosecution of Lucy Connolly, along with many other of the Southport protesters. And all three of those criminals, the racist, the pedo, and the terrorist fundraiser, they all got softer sentences than Lucy Connolly, Britain's political prisoner, for simply sending out a tweet. So we've seen another flood of articles going out and posts calling for him to resign. Again, Robert Jenrick called him an anti-British activist and pointed out quite rightly that he has been defending, as a barrister, he was defending Britain's enemies. These included, ISIS characters and a whole slew of unsavoury people in IRA as well. And the defence of Hermer had been that, well, you don't understand how it works. And as barristers, we have the cab rank rule. We have to take the first person in the queue. Well, he must be the unluckiest barrister in the world to have these characters all lining up just as he becomes free and available. Jenrick said that was a lot of nonsense, but even Lord Hermer's great friend, another King's Counsel, in his defence said, well, actually, the fact is he is an activist. He is a lawyer's activist. Starmer knew this full well. This was the first time, I think, ever, or at least for 150 years or so, that we've had an Attorney General who wasn't a Member of Parliament or wasn't sitting in the House of Lords at the time, was parachuted in by Starmer, who also is an activist Prime Minister. And these two characters together, along with David Lammy, these are three men who put far left ideology, post-colonial theory as well, ahead of Britain's national interest. Homer, of course, the man who was behind, we think, in some way, the disastrous Chagos deal. This is a man who has advised Caribbean governments on how to get billions of reparations for Britain's alleged role in slavery, who said that the British Empire was deeply racist and completely wrote off the empire without any balance as to all the good that it had done. And we now have these three men, these three stooges, presenting Britain on the world stage. I think it's an outrage.
Rafe, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. That's Rafe Haydale-Mancu, who's a historian and commentator. Ian in Liverpool says, hi, Dr. David. When are we ever better off under any government? We're highly taxed, the oppressive net zero, the workers' retirement age forever further away, labelled with negative terms if we disagree with their policies. I feel like we're cash cows who need to be quiet and work harder. Thank you for that. Simon in Durham, I'm a bit late to this discussion, David. Maybe it's been said, but Robert Jenrick, if he's serious about what he says, might be an asset to reform. I can't see it happening all the same. Have a great Sunday. Keep those messages coming in, please. The number 0344 499 1000. I'm asking, just in terms of that question this morning, I'm asking the question this morning, who do you think, which politician, I can't remember quite what I said. Which political leader do you trust the least? That's the question. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Just before the break, let me just tell you, Alex Phillips is coming up after my show. She's going to be talking to Chris Philp. That is exclusive here on Talk at around 11 o'clock this morning. So that's Alex Phillips in conversation with Chris Philp. Right, let's take a break. After the break, it's our tech rundown time with David Sfarring. That's all still to come. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning. Donald Trump says Elon Musk, this is the latest, has lost his mind. He attempted to draw a line under a bitter White House feud. He says he's not particularly interested in speaking to Elon Musk. As we know, they clashed publicly over the tax and spending bill. The president says, I'm over it. I want to move on. I'm not interested in talking to him. And of course, in the week, I think this was Thursday, Musk said that Trump needed to be impeached and he was in the Epstein files. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 928. Good morning, David. This is a really important message. Barry, thank you very much for this. Remembering this day, the 43 British service personnel, 6 civilians killed on the RFA Sir Galahad, Bluff Cove, Falklands, 8th of June 1982, lest we forget. Thank you for that, Barry. Lots of you getting in touch saying you don't trust any politicians because they're all compulsive liars. Also, Alison in Richmond said, hang on a minute, David, surely the French police can slash these dinghies whilst they're still on the shoreline. Yes, you would think that is the case. This is another important point. We were talking about immunisations earlier and the fact that we're seeing a reduction in kids getting vaccinations for things like MMR, for example. And I'm old enough to remember doing Watchdog Health Check when Andrew Wakefield's report came out, which is when parents... This is the link, or the supposed link, between the MMR vaccine and autism, which was not true. What we saw then was a fall off of the number of parents giving their vaccine to the kids. And, of course, we then saw measles coming back and the resurgence of that, which is now what we're seeing again. Anne makes an important point. Is it any wonder that parents are reluctant to vaccinate their kids after what went on during COVID? And I would agree with that. And, of course, I think this is the point I tried to make earlier, which is you need to disassociate the COVID stuff from the other chartered vaccinations because, of course, they have been used for a very long time. They're tried and tested. The COVID vaccine was rolled out at speed. I think some of those safety trials were not quite what we were led to believe at that time. And I think there were a lot of things that were told to the public that weren't exactly true, or weren't true at all, actually. Keep those messages coming in, please. Which political leader do you trust the least? 0344 499 1000. But now it's time for Tech Rundown.
Tech Rundown.
Davis Bang.
David Bull.
Nice to see you. Nice haircut.
Thank you.
It's quite short.
Yeah, they cut it way shorter than I would have liked. You know, that annoying thing all the time.
Well, at least you got your money's worth.
Yeah, I actually got, you know, a free haircut, so that's probably why they cut it so short.
Oh. How do you get a free haircut?
It's like a punch card.
Oh, I see. So yeah. a bit like coffee.
Precisely.
Yes, OK, very good. Right. Now, this is quite interesting. Lots of tech news around. Amazon is under fire, isn't it? Because this is to do with reviews. And the way, you know, when you go onto Amazon, I mean, I do read it, but I tend to look at the star rating, you know. Do people like this particular blender or batteries or whatever it is? And then if lots of people like it, I'll tend to buy it.
Yeah, precisely. Apparently, 90% of UK shoppers rely on reviews when they're buying products, especially technology products.
Of course.
And, you know, this results in £23 billion worth of consumer annual spending. So that's a lot of money. However, the DMCCA, or the Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Act, they've sort of been looking into this over the past 4 years, and they've realised that a lot of these reviews are actually fake. Actually, sort of as an online content creator, I received a lot of offers to write false reviews on Amazon in exchange for products or money. So this is a rampant problem.
So people message you?
Yeah, they email me and they're like, would you like a free blender? In exchange, please write a 5-star, you know, review, and then post it on your socials as well.
Star.
Yeah, precisely. So this is obviously very, very problematic and probably illegal as well. So, you know, Google also has been facing the same issue, and however, they have come up with this solution. So Amazon is saying that they've got new robust systems to spot fake reviews.
How do they do that?
And it's going to be a combination of AI, obviously, and also manual labour. I feel like that the manual labour will come as, will form a major part of that. And also another issue that they've got is something called catalogue abuse. So you've got sort of 5-star reviews for another product, for instance, from the same store, and they somehow transfer those reviews to a new product. So the new product could be a totally different thing from the old one, but they can transfer the review. So they're cutting that out.
How do they get the review on there? I mean, how do you get the review on there?
So basically, you know, there are tools on Amazon where, you know, you can link products together and therefore share the reviews. And obviously, they're cutting that out.
Okay.
And so, however, they've already started with this. Last year alone, they cut out 275 million fake reviews. That's the sort of level of fakery we've got. And apparently 99% of products have got verified reviews. So that's you know, there is progress being made in this area.
Very good, very good. Now, I spoke about this right at the beginning of the programme, and I trailed the fact you were coming on. This is about phone theft, just the numbers of phones going missing. I mean, it's absolutely mad.
Yeah.
And something like 75% of the phones that are nicked end up in China. There's a big hoo-ha about what the companies need to do to disable those phones.
Yeah, so for context, 2/3 of thefts in London alone involve mobile phones. Like 2/3. That is a shocking amount. And in addition to that, 70% of knife crime is linked to robbery, and therefore a lot of this is linked to phones as well. So that's £50 million of phone theft in London alone a year. And obviously the Met Police wants to do something about this. And what they essentially want both Google and Apple to do is to share the IMEI number, which is sort of like a special number that's almost like a serial code that's linked to each particular device. And the idea being is that if one of these numbers is reported as being stolen, then Google or Apple can sort of block that from that phone from ever going online again. And I feel like that's a little bit of a misguided solution.
Why?
Because similar solutions are already in place for both Android and iPhones. For instance, if you've got an iPhone, you've got something called activation lock. So when my iPhone got stolen in Barcelona 2 years ago, I went on my iPad, I logged into my account, and it said this phone is stolen, and therefore, unless if I were to put my own Apple ID password in, nobody could use it. So it's basically the same solution. However, obviously, that hasn't totally solved the issue yet, as there's still so many phone thefts. So what Apple has introduced more recently is the fact that every single part of your phone is linked to your ID as well. Because there's a massive issue in regards to people stealing your phone and using the screen or using the battery on other devices. All of that is now linked to your account.
So that has an IMEI number, does it?
Not necessarily, but it's all linked to your Apple account. So unless if someone can log into your Apple account on a totally new phone in Nigeria or whatever, they can't use your screen or your home button, let's say, something like that.
Gosh. So they are making progress.
So they definitely are making progress, and I just think that the Met are they're not quite understanding where Apple and Google are going with this. They probably just need to do their research a bit more.
Okay, so festival time, of course it's pouring with rain, which means that we will have a festival, but talk about AI playlists. They say it's harming UK festivals. I don't understand.
Yeah, and I don't totally agree with this either.
No, well, I don't.
So they're claiming that, so like if you go on Spotify, for instance, a lot of people do only listen to AI playlists. So
I've got that AI assistant who says, "Hey, Dave."
Yeah, there we go. You're part of the problem.
I am.
So basically, the Spotify AI, let's say, will understand your music taste and curate playlists specially for you. And because of that, you sort of create your own echo chamber of music.
Right.
You're not really discovering new songs. Like, how would you discover new songs?
Well,
David?
I don't want to.
I feel the same way, to be fair. And apparently, this sort of echo chamber is affecting music festivals, because in the past you go to a music festival to discover new music. However, the trend is that younger people are just buying a one-day pass and seeing the one artist that they like.
But that's really interesting. But there's no difference between that and going to see, say, Madonna, where you just want to hear her greatest hits. I don't want to hear any of the new stuff.
Precisely. And I also have to say that music discovery is probably at its greatest now, because so many of the new songs that I'm hearing on the radio originated from TikTok trends. So, like, I think it's just the discovery of music that's changing, and just to blame it on AI,
it's a bit much.
Ridiculous.
Now, I'm loving this one about Amazon reportedly developing software for little robots that can then deliver your goods.
Yeah, so apparently Amazon in the US are building a humanoid park, and basically it's a testing park where they're going to test these humanoid robots that will one day deliver your packages.
That's wild. Here they are, look. So little robots, so they've got little yellow
Yeah,
basket.
so this is currently in the warehouse right now. So basically, they'll
they
use
don't look very nimble.
They'll probably use very similar technology, but improved, I imagine, in testing these new robots out. So they've bought over 20,000 Rivian electric vans, and the idea is that these robots will sit in the back with your packages, and when the delivery driver stops at your house, the robot will make the final delivery.
Wow.
And obviously, there are concerns not everyone has a very evenly distributed suburban house.
No.
A lot of the houses here, especially, are quite confusing, let's say. So obviously they are testing in America.
Well, you've been to my house. You know it would never get up the steps.
Precisely. Like, it wouldn't even be able to identify whose house is who.
It wouldn't have a clue.
But obviously it's very exciting technology.
Why do they walk so strangely?
So this is where the technology needs to improve, obviously. When you've got motors like that, they can only walk in a certain way.
Dave wants to know, can they throw the parcel over the fence just the way that Amazon do at the moment and ignore it and then let it get wet?
I'm sure you can hack into it and then force all of your neighbours' packages to be thrown.
I love that. I mean, it is a worry what happens. I mean, I think they're saying that the robots would deliver some of them, the driver would do others, so therefore you get around faster. But obviously, that's going to be a problem. Also, we were talking earlier on about Elon Musk, Donald Trump, of course, and Tesla, and we're seeing Tesla sales slumping.
Yeah, so Tesla sales have been slumping worldwide. However, the UK has been quite resistant to it. I think last month there was only a small decrease versus the 70% decreases that we're seeing worldwide. However, in May we actually saw a 36% decrease in Tesla sales, down to 2,016 vehicles versus over 3,000 year on year, and this is actually it's quite different to the Tesla's competitors. BYD, for instance, which is a Chinese electric car brand, their sales absolutely soared. They actually
are they much cheaper?
They it depends. You can get cheaper models, but you can get ones that are equivalent to Tesla. But BYD, their sales have actually overtaken Tesla. There's not really a slowdown in the car market or the electric car market. It's just that people are not buying Teslas.
Fair enough, fair enough. And finally, you're obsessed with pornography. So Pornhub, which we talked about, was it last week?
Yes, we did.
We did. So, I mean, for those people who don't know, it is isn't it the largest pornographic website? Now, they've pulled out of France, and what's happened as a result?
Yeah, so apparently France is the second largest market for Pornhub.
Who knew?
I wouldn't have imagined that. And because of a new age verification law, that's, these laws are being expanded worldwide, but it's been implemented in France. Pornhub have actually decided that's easier just to pull out of the market entirely. Wow. So basically the idea is with this age verification is that when you go to one of these websites, you need to scan your face, and nobody really wants to do that before watching pornography because of data breaches that are possible, stuff like that. And so people are just using VPNs. In fact, Proton...
This is a virtual private network.
Yes. Proton VPN, which is one of the largest, saw a 1,000% increase in sign-ups. And that's more than they got when TikTok was banned in the US. That's how desperate these French people are to view pornography.
But it just shows how powerful pornography is.
Yeah, it's like there's no point really in trying to stop children, I'd say, in accessing pornography when, these people will always find workarounds.
But the kids will know how to use a VPN anyway.
Precisely. So I think these efforts are futile, unfortunately, as much as we want to protect our children.
And of course, parental responsibility plays a lot in this. Really good to see you. Thank you very much for coming in. That's Davis Fang, of course, today's Tech Rundown.
Tech Rundown.
Barry says, I trust Starmer to do anything that is not in Britain's interest. The person I would like to nominate is Boris Johnson. When in office, he facilitated from one side to another. Keep those messages coming in. David, what leader don't I trust? This is Tim. There is no leader in this country. I'm asking, which political leader do you trust the least? The number 03444 499 1000. Calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can send a voice note. Oh, I've got to go through some voice notes as well. At talkTV. Let's take a break. After the break, I've got all the latest royal news. Of course, I'll be joined by Rupert Bell, Talk's royal commentator. He'll be joining me after this break. Good morning.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 9:44 on Sunday, June the 8th. Already, goodness me. I'm asking this morning, which political leader do you trust the least? Let me know your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. Text the word Talk in your message to 87222. You can message us as well on X at talkTV. But now it is time for Whipper's Wild Roundup.
Rupert's Royal Roundup.
Good morning, Rupert.
Good morning, David.
Now, listen, I got into trouble last week, didn't I? Because someone complained that I was belittling you and I was taking the mick out of you, which, of course, I was doing with love and compassion.
I don't mind. Anyone can take the mickey out of me. I fully deserve it. So crack on, David.
Well, crack on indeed. Now, were you at the Derby?
I was indeed, yes.
Yes. How was that?
Well, it was won in brilliant style by Aidan O'Brien. He won his 11th Derby. It was... but unfortunately, sadly, from a royal perspective, it used to be a sort of must-do on the Queen's calendar. She never missed the Derby unless for exceptional circumstances. But unfortunately, yesterday was a royal-free zone, which... for the sort of well-being of the race is, it was part of the day. And sort of talking, there's a few royal photographers down there sort of bemoaning the fact that the Derby is losing its place even in the royal family sort of sporting calendar now. Even though the King will see him at Royal Ascot in 10 days' time, and other members of the royal family, the Derby, was an important part of the Queen's sort of summer calendar.
So why is that? Why did the King not attend?
Well, look, he's obviously managing his schedule. He likes racing, but not anything like his mother.
Right.
And I suppose he thinks, well, I'm going to be going 5 days to Royal Ascot if I can.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know whether he'll do all 5 days of sort of managing his schedule, because it's, given that he's still recovering from cancer, it's going to be all part of, we're never quite sure. But obviously his intention would be to try and be there for the 5 days of the Royal Ascot. But it was a sort of notable sort of admission, sort of missing person was the members of the royal family. So, but a great race. I always enjoy it, but it is a sporting institution that's in a bit of a sort of quandary as to how it sort of continues to engage with the wider sporting public.
Well, it was interesting. Piers Pottinger was with me yesterday, and he was saying, well, of course, it's very wet, so he gave us a tip, and the horse he tipped won.
Lambourne, he must have... yes, well, the reason he would have tipped Lambourne like the soft ground. So well done to Piers. Sadly, I didn't. Mine finished second last, but there we go.
Well, I'll go to him for tips, not you.
Yeah, well, that's right. And, you could have... I'm glad you didn't get me on yesterday morning to give the listeners a horrendous tip.
Yes.
Who ran really badly.
Exactly right. Now... Prince Harry, our favourite character in the royal family, hopes for reconciliation with the King. Are they doomed?
At the moment, they are. Not helped probably by the twerking video and all the stuff that's going on around that. It was a weird decision to put that out. Okay, and the sort of recollection, the story that coming out now is all the fallout about when calling their daughter Lilibet. They originally said, excuse me, that they'd been talking to the Queen, but the Queen said no one sought my permission to use Lilibet, which was, of course, the Queen's nickname. And reportedly she said, well, they've even taken that away from me now, the one thing that she owned. And then there was sort of, he never wrote about it in his book Spare, so it definitely caused a wider gap. And the problem is they don't trust anything that Harry and Meghan say, in the sense that if they do try and open up the communications, they're pretty sure that it will end up in the wider domain. After the court case, he lost the court case, he goes and does another interview with the BBC and starts saying things like, well, I don't know how long my father's got to live and all this sort of stuff. So they are they would seem to be very isolated from the royal family. They're not only isolated from the royal family. Harry seems to be very isolated from his old friends. So he hasn't even got to sort of use some friends and get some counsel from many of his friends who sort of just got a bit exasperated with him. So I think it's a tough one. And we saw them going to Disneyland. That seemed to be well curated. You know, there didn't seem to be any other members of the public while they were there. So they obviously got Disneyland to give them
yeah, and also she then tweeted to Disneyland, didn't she? So that made me think, well, that was all comped.
Well, I'm pretty sure. And, you know, it's, you know, and the way they've done the photographs, again, whenever you see, look, they are absolutely right if they want to protect the privacy of their children.
Yeah.
But as I say, we see sort of half pictures of Lilibet and Archie, yet the one person we always managed most of the time to see a picture of is Meghan. It's all about her. You know, even in the, you know, most times, you know, it's quietly, you know, managed. You know, they obviously had a photographer walking around with them. You know, normally, look, most people...
that's bizarre.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point. So you look at it, you know, someone filming everything. I know, I've taken my children, we've been to Disneyland, and you get photographs if you go down one of the rides and you can buy and pay.
Yeah.
They definitely were walking around with a photographer to basically capture this special family moment. We all know Disneyland is great for taking children. But, you know, they obviously got the VIP lane with extra bells on.
Yeah. Well, Lilibet got a cake, didn't she? A Little Mermaid cake covered in hues of blue, sugary frosting, while Happy Birthday Lily was written in pink icing.
Well, I wonder, and presumably Meghan had a bag of flower sprinkles with her, and she sprinkled that over them just to elevate that cake even further.
Well, you can never go anywhere without flower sprinkles, Rupert.
No, you can't. Anyway, so, you know, it's been a strange week. I mean, when that video dropped, I just could not believe it. And I thought, you know, the birth one, I thought, why? And yet she's now saying that within her eyes, that the American public loved it. Well, I can't necessarily account for taste of Americans then, even though I'm married.
Just leave it there. Oh, yes, you are, yes.
Yeah, but she was pretty appalled. But then she has lived in this country for 30-odd years. So the fact of the matter is it just seemed inappropriate. It's not very royal. I don't know why they thought that was, you know, what are they trying to prove by that? And then what it seems to do, it then sort of fires up the conspiracy theorists out there into they go into an absolute meltdown about the whole thing. So, I mean, I don't know what
I heard she wasn't pregnant, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you go, oh, it did. And so the whole thing is sort of unedifying.
But who's advising them, Rupert? Because clearly they need a new advisor.
Well, they've got people in this quasi-royal, you know, their royal household, i.e. just an office. You know, like most people have people who work for them, and of course they can afford. It's not a royal, quasi-royal household. So I think it's not been the greatest week for Harry and Meghan, even by their standards. I don't think. But lovely they go to Disneyland. We've all done it, but then that just looked so controlled, and you know that they were being taken around sort of everywhere. I'd be very interested to know what other members, there must have been other people there who would have seen them, or were they just whisked around in a sort of private way and kept away from everybody? So, which again, just seems wrong. The whole point of going to Disneyland, you're around everybody, you're watching the parade. It's all part of okay, they obviously might be an element of keeping some people away, but let's see pictures of them with everybody else enjoying Disneyland. And yet, we see this really managed visit around Disneyland. Even that, I hope Lilibet and Archie had a fantastic time and are unaware of all the other stuff. But you just know that Mum and Dad are trying to create another PR feel-good story. But even that has a sort of slight uncomfortable feeling about it.
Rupert, I love the way you say it as you think. Always good to talk to you. Rupert Bell there, our Talks Royal commentator. And that was Rupert's Royal Roundup.
Rupert's Royal Roundup.
Right, we'll take a break. After the break, your calls, thoughts and messages. This is Talk. Donald Trump says Elon Musk, this is the latest, has lost his mind. He attempted to draw a line under a bitter White House feud. He says he's not particularly interested in speaking to Elon Musk. As we know, they clashed publicly over the tax and spending bill. The president says, I'm over it. I want to move on. I'm not interested in talking to him. And, of course, in the week, I think this was Thursday, Musk said that Trump needed to be impeached and he was in the Epstein files. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I love this one. Tina says, good morning, David. I always give my Amazon drivers a can of drink. What would I give the robots? Would I give them a can of WD-40? Very good. I've got loads of voice notes. Steve, good morning.
Hey David, Steve from Yorkshire. I love your show. I love most of what you say, not 100%. And your guest, you're speaking a lot of common sense this morning. I think the only person I don't trust, it's more the party. It's Labour. I'm a Yorkshireman, and you know I've been brought up to say like Labour is supposed to be who I really should follow, but that's not the case. They basically wash their hands with the working class. So I'd say more than a leader, it's more the party. The party, Labour, no way. They're just running us into the ground. So, yeah, Labour is who I don't trust. Cheers, David. Thank you, mate.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Steve. Let's move on to John. Good morning, John.
Morning, David. It's John from Oldham. Regarding the young lad who couldn't get treatment at the NHS because he's a private school pupil. Unfortunately, it's not just kids that it's happening to. Twice I've had treatment denied because apparently the NHS can't afford those kind of operations. Just about 2 months ago, I had a cyst on my face, went to the doctors, they referred me. I got a text message saying, I'm sorry, we don't do this operation anymore. See you later and thank you. And that's twice that's happened to me. Cheers.
Thank you very much, John. Hev, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. David Ball. Yes, I would just like to say the reason why it's called PMQs is because people ask questions, and that's why it's not called PM Q&As.
Oh, that told me. Golly, thank you very much, Hev. Isn't the idea of a question that you get an answer based on the question that you asked? But anyway, just my thought there. Good morning, Dr. David. Good show so far, thank you very much. In regard to Tesla sales, do you think it's ironic that people will not buy a Tesla because of the politics of Elon Musk, but they then will go and buy a BYD instead? Of course, that's the whole point, which is buying into the Chinese manufacturing. And of course, we don't know how much they're spying on us anyway. Keep all those messages coming in, please. David, it seems to me the only country that is proud of its British heritage is the Falkland Islands. Maybe it's somewhere I should move to. Alex Phillips, good morning. You look resplendent in yellow. Oh, you're crackling as well.
Absolutely. I'm just really annoyed. I'm angry.
Why are you annoyed?
Because I've come into work this morning, walk into the tube, I walk past